Our Board Policy Committee meeting. Sherry, will you please call roll?
Mr. Bruno,
Here.
Ms. Holder, Mr. Casillas,
Here.
Ms. Bukowski. Here. Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. Lear,
Here.
Ms. Beislin. Here. Mr. Kozakowski,
Here.
Ms. Sanders, Mr. Mast,
Here.
Mr. Nadronsi, and Mr. Hill.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. The second item on the agenda is the agenda. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Metkowski, Bruno. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Wonderful. The third thing on the agenda is the approval of our two previous meetings, the minutes, that is. So those are our committee meetings from September 11th and September 16th. Those should be in the documents that were shared via email. And it sounds like there's a separate email specifically for September 11th that's attached to that chain as well, I see here. I need a motion for the approval of those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Kozowski, Matowski, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Wonderful. So we have a variety of items on our agenda this afternoon that we're going to discuss. The first being a new on-site therapy dog policy, and we have a guest. So let us welcome Christy Wilson. She's going to present for us a policy proposal on therapy dogs, and I believe we have a presentation as well. Is that correct? Oh, there it is. Therapy dogs, Central High School.
Thank you for having me. I think, am I?
You're good.
Okay. The technology is new to me. So thank you for having me. I am really excited about the opportunity to present this idea to you all, and I just wanted to share some information. I am a visual learner, and so I know that we all have different learning styles, so I put this together. I do have copies in case you kind of have your back to the presentation. I'll slide those down to you, sorry. You can have one of those. And I'll just kind of run through this really quick. So I've been working in Unit 4 schools for 5 years. Prior to that, I was in the mental health field for over a decade, doing therapy, running programs at what was formerly known as Community Elements and the Mental Health Center, and is now Rosecrance. So I ran a variety of youth programs there. And so since my time here, I've been part of the district's trauma response team and have been part of responding to at least 7. I was kind of going through, those aren't really things that you want to remember, but at least 7 different crisis situations that have come about in our district. And part of what we do as a trauma response team is sometimes bringing in comfort dogs, and those have been really, really successful when we've been able to bring them in. The problem is that has hurt my heart every time is that not everybody has access to those because the organization that we typically use has a lot of golden retrievers, which are amazing dogs, very well temperamented, but they are also very high dander, high allergy dogs. And so if you can imagine being at an elementary school where you're responding to a crisis situation and having to tell a little kid, I'm sorry, you can't go see the dog because you have an allergy, it's really heartbreaking. And so I wanted to change this as I thought about, like, you know, moving forward, what does this need to look like for our school and our district? It meant having a more allergy-friendly option. So I want you to kind of meet me a little bit and this is Iris. She is our 8-month-old puppy. She is an Aussie Doodle, so that combination of poodle and Aussie means that her hair is really long, but she does not shed and she is very low dander, which would make her more accessible to students and staff. We actually got her in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We drove all the way there to make sure that we could get an allergy-friendly dog. And I'm also kind of excited about the parallels, right, of being able to talk to students about different aspects of her life. She came out of a not great situation, was an ASPCA raid and rescue dog, and then was adopted into our family. So I think there are some parallels there that we can use with students as well. I kind of talked about myself working in mental health and starting my 5th year at Central. Together, Iris and I have completed 3 training courses, and we're continuing those training courses and will continue them probably for the duration of her life, as long as we're working towards therapy dog and maintaining that therapy dog certification. We are going to begin working with a private trainer soon, beyond the group lessons, who has previously trained hunting dogs and canines. So I'm really excited about that. That person actually stayed at our house while we were gone over break, and it was kind of like a little mini boot camp for our puppy. We came back and she was much more well behaved. So just want to kind of let you look at, I'm not going to read everything that's on this slide, but where we kind of see and where I kind of see a therapy dog fitting into the day-to-days of being in a school. So there's like the building support stuff, greeting students, making them feel welcome, being in the hallways, allowing staff to sign up for classroom visits, potentially part of like an MTSS intervention with check-in, check-out with some students who just may need that extra pull of, check-in, traditional check-in, check-out might not be working. I can tell you when we first got her, I brought her on grounds, not in the building to be clear, but on grounds to meet staff, and there were 3 students that were leaving after 4th hour. I don't know if you know, but Central has 8 hours, so if they're leaving after 4th hour, then they're pretty much done, no reentry for the day. And they were hightailing it out, right? Like running out those visitor doors. And I was standing there with her, and if it was a cartoon, you'd have heard that, right? They stopped dead in their tracks. Who is this? Who's this who is this puppy? So, and she has that effect, and that's not an effect that we as people, I think, can always have on our students, right? They wouldn't have stopped for me, but they stopped for her. So there's all sorts of different building supports that she could be part of, and that therapy dogs could be part of. Also traumatic events, so I talked about bringing in those comfort dogs, but she could be with me as a handler as part of that trauma response team that goes out. And then any community events where we feel like, it could be beneficial to have her there and get a draw. So the back to school events that we do as a district, district engage events, some after school activities. To be clear, I just want to kind of spell out what the program is her running around the building, any kid taking her on a walk, her being around the building. She would be with a handler at all times. It can't be an all-day long event because what we know is that dogs build up cortisol as they're working, and this would be a working position for her. And so there's research just showing that they build up that stress hormone when they are working, and so I would want to try and give her breaks, and there should be limits on dogs in buildings, to not be doing these all-day long events. And then a reward or consequence system, like she wouldn't be part of that necessarily. And then you can kind of read through this. Probably the things that you can imagine as benefits: reduction in anxiety levels, decreases the emotional trauma of those big events. It can really help to increase empathy and compassion, decrease retaliatory violence, improving self-esteem and academic success, and then providing opportunities to develop positive relationships and feeling of belonging. That is kind of our theme at Central this year, is just promoting this sense of belonging and letting all kids know that they belong in our building and that they're wanted in our building. And I think that, you know, having a dog on site could be part of that plan. And then there's published information that I kind of included in there that just talks about you know, research that shows that having therapy dogs in buildings can really help overall outcomes. And then these are our organizations that are already doing this. They already have therapy dogs on site. So I have actually been working really closely with Crete-Monee School District and Mahomet Seymour. Crete-Monee has 6 dogs across their district, including at their administrative buildings. And their handlers are all different people. They have a dean of students who's a handler, a social worker who's a handler. One of their administrators at their district office is a handler. There are 2 dogs at Mahomet Seymour, and then therapy dogs at both Carl and the U of I Counseling Center, and U of I PD now has several that work with them as well. So I've been in touch with all entities except for Carl, just kind of gathering information on what has worked and what hasn't. And Crete-Monee and Mahomet Seymour have both been incredibly generous to say, you know, having dogs in our building has been so amazing that we will share any information that we can. So Crete-Monee has shared their entire Google Drive. So if this is something that we decide is something that can move forward, I have handler handbooks, I have administrative handbooks, I have all the stuff that has been written out, and no need to recreate the wheel. So my last slide is just probably frequently asked questions. I'll let you guys ask me questions as well. But these are just things that, you know, often come up, like what if a student or staff is afraid? So there would be no forcing the dog on anybody. She would be there. Dogs should be present, but not like pushed on anybody. And then insurance through the Alliance of Therapy Dogs. Liability insurance is part of membership there. I'm not sure what else would be required by the district, but that is part of their membership. And then the dog should be owned by the handler and not by the district. And then other opportunities. I bring that up only to say, as I've been talking with people about this and the idea of this, I've already had people from other buildings reach out to me. Centennial has already reached out, their librarian, and said, I hear you have a therapy dog in the building. And I was like, no, wait a minute. We do not. I said, you know, I'm working on it. I'm working on a policy. So I know that there are other people who are interested in that opportunity. So that is what I have for you presentation-wise, and I'm open to any questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Christy. Questions? Mr. Bruno?
Is the idea, well, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Is the idea that the dog comes to work with you every day?
So I've toyed back and forth with that for the reason that I was talking about with the cortisol buildup. When I spoke with the U of I Counseling Center, she said that she only brings her dog 3 to 4 times a week and then gives him a day off, so that, you know, the idea is that when you put that vest on them, they're in work mode, and that is when cortisol can start building. And so she gives him a totally free day. So I've kind of gone back and forth with that. Crete-Monee, they're with them all the time. So when they go to after-school meetings, when they go to after-school functions, their dogs are with them all the time. My hope is to kind of gather some more information from Mahomet as well, and decide, and that's something that I'm also open to, is, you know, do we think 4 days is feasible but not 5? Or do we think 3 is feasible but not 5? I'm open to that. I think I will just be very protective of her to know that, you know, having long days, you know, 7:30 to 6, if I have after school stuff, I'd want to be really careful and maybe run her home halfway through the day. So, yeah.
I love this idea. So just a couple of the logistical questions. would this be like like the other schools that are doing this, is it a separate position? Like that would create a separate like payment position within the district? Like eventually, I would assume like places like Carl, there's people that are just specifically handling dogs. How does that look? And if you have somebody in if you have somebody in and already a teacher, et cetera, like, and bringing a therapy dog in, how are you juggling? Because those, to me, looks like two separate positions. How do you view that playing out?
So, my hope, and I've talked with Dr. Gardner about this, is during some of our PD days to be able to go to like spend the day at Crete Monee and just see what that looks like for their social worker who is a handler. It is not a separate position. The dog is part of her everyday routine. The only time her dog is not with her is if there is a student whose family or a student who has not consented to want to be around the dog. Then she leaves the dog in her office space in a crate, which the dogs are trained for, and then finds a separate meeting space for that particular student. So for her, it's not a separate position. It's just part of the day-to-day stuff that she does, and people have learned kind of to expect that her being a social worker is her with her dog. So on the flip side, their district has a pretty robust program. So their dean of students, who has a dog as well and is in their middle school, actually is their director of their program. So he does have kind of this separate role. And I wouldn't say that we need to do that, but I would say, like, I'm being hopeful. I'm being cup half full. As this becomes something that we see that, data shows is successful in our schools, I would hope that there are opportunities maybe for other people, just equity-wise too, because I think all buildings could benefit from it. And I think that there could be a need for kind of more programming centered around it than just having a handler have it. I don't know what that looks like. I think that is maybe a little bit down the road and could use some planning.
Do these like when you have the dog, are they trained to go to one person, or it's not like you can hand them off to? That's what I figure.
Yeah. So when therapy dogs are trained, it's similar to a service animal in that they are trained with a handler. So I would be her handler. Anyone else who has a therapy dog, they're their assigned handler. However, unlike a service dog, right, she is not attached to me for a need, right? So I'm not type 1 diabetic and she doesn't have to be with me all the time. I don't have a visual impairment where she needs to be with me. So in the event that there is an emergency situation, I would have designated people in the building to say, hey, I left Iris in my office and I need you to go let her out. And I am already like bursting at the seams with people who are volunteering to take that position. So that's the difference, right? Is that therapy dogs can be handled by other people. They are just most trained with the person that is their handler.
So somebody else couldn't take the dog around to provide services. It would
Correct.
just be,
No, absolutely not. Yep. And that's a safety issue as well, because her being my dog, I can pay attention to those cues that, someone else can come in and be familiar with her and go and take her out and walk her. But it's very different in terms of the commands and her ability to maneuver spaces and people and situations. So, yeah. I also want to just say, and I didn't say this in the presentation, but I was asked by several people throughout the day today as I was talking about coming here to present this, are you taking her with you? And I said, absolutely not. Because she's 8 months old and she's still a puppy. And she is still very much puppy, and we are a work in progress with training. So my thing about doing this is doing it well and doing it right. So technically, she can take the AKC K9 Good Citizen test anytime now, really. She cannot be given the Alliance of Therapy Dogs training certification until she's 1. If I'm being really honest with you, I'm not sure she's going to be ready at 1. She's a puppy. So I really want to make sure, like as I'm thinking about this, to make sure that she is in a good space to bring her into a building. I did kind of outline in the policy very slow integration process, which also please bear with me because I'm not a policy writer. And so I did realize putting that into the policy that's really specific to me. And in writing policy for a district, I'm really writing it for all schools. So that will need to be fixed. But I did do kind of a slow integration because it is really key for dogs as they're young to be exposed to environments so that they get familiar with them and are comfortable with them. So I talked about like maybe in January I could start to bring her into the building on weekends when there is nobody present, right? Just to get her familiar with that space. But I kind of outlined integration policy or integration kind of aspect of that that would also be dependent on her certifications.
We appreciate you sharing that with us, Christy. In your research, did you find any districts that have adopted specific policy related to this? As I'm looking through the documents that you shared, I clicked on the link for Muhammad. It didn't really look like a policy. It was more of an observation form.
Okay. I thought I had embedded several, so I can send those. Crete-Monee has a specific policy. They are by far, they have the most robust programming
it is.
around their therapy dogs. And so they have a policy. Some of the stuff that I put in our policy was kind of copied and pasted from there because they've had a successful program for years. So that's why I made sure to kind of cite those because they essentially said copy and take whatever you need to copy and take.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at their online, Muhammad's online policy manual. Maybe they just haven't taken formal adoption of it, but I do see the document that you're referencing.
Okay, but Crete-Monee has by far, I mean, they have a many-page handler handbook, a many-page administrative handbook. They have a policy. They have the forms that they send home as part of their registration process to let families know that there is a dog in that building and to allow for consent. So a lot of good information from them that wouldn't necessarily be on their website, but is available has been available to me through their shared Google Drive.
Okay.
Yeah, and I could get you probably whatever you would want.
Christy, how many breaks during the day does the dog need?
I think
And I have a little dog at home, so, and if you're the handler, I understand, like, right, she'll have to get outside, and she's going to have to walk, and all that good stuff. So how many breaks during the day does a little dog need?
So I think it really depends. Like that, it's a hard question to answer because right now our dog goes out 3 to 4 times a day, right? During the school day, it's like she goes out in the morning before I would come to work and then once during the day. However, what I know is true of me is probably true of all of you, would be true of her too. When she's exposed to a stressful situation, I'd probably want to give her a break, right? And so just in the same way that I might step outside, I would step outside with her, right? Because we experience a lot of things during our day where we might have to say, ooh, that was a lot. I need a minute. And so it would be the same.
So when you're saying give her a break, that doesn't, she could also just take a break in your office, is that correct? Like with the door closed. Taking a break doesn't mean that she's breaking outside,
No.
essentially, but it could.
Yes.
My other question is, could she go to other schools with you when you're called for the trauma team? So like you could take her to other buildings as part of the trauma response team.
Yeah, and that is the idea as well, because I want students to have more access. I want staff to have more access. I was at Botton Field last February, and it was heartbreaking. I was almost in tears when kids would be told, "You can't see the dog, you have an allergy, honey," and they would just sob. And she is a dog that would be more accessible to more people. So that would be the idea, is I would stay a part of the trauma response team and bring her with me. She would then also just be known, right, to people in buildings versus only bringing in these dogs that we don't know. We bring in these comfort dogs from a nonprofit, and they're great, but we don't know them, so.
So what would be the liability of having a dog in the school? I know you said the handler takes, have a liability insurance, but as far as the school, because there's no 100% hypoallergenic animal, right? So even though they may have low dander saliva, things like that. And so say if you bring it to another school or you expose it to another child and they get licked and something happens, have you come across that or?
It's something that I need to explore some more for sure with the other districts that have them in their buildings. I think part of that is that form that they send out as part of their registration process that allows families to indicate if there are allergens or sensitivities or anything like that, or in general, right? If there are just fears from a previous trauma of a dog and they say, no, I don't want my kid to see the dog, then they could indicate that there. As far as the liability on the district, I don't know. I might defer to our lawyers in the room. But it's something that I could definitely investigate more with the other districts, like what they have in place in terms of, any additional liability insurance. I know that the Alliance of Therapy Dogs membership does cover liability insurance. I need to look more into how much that is. And we're not there yet, so I haven't dove too deep into that yet. Yeah.
Probably answer a little bit on that. We would need our own coverage on top of whatever the coverage it would be there, and you surprisingly not that these dogs ever bite, but like dog bites can cause some substantially high damages. I would think it would probably just add it on to whatever.
Yeah, I meant as far as if you go to another school and you don't have like a liability and the kid comes up and they get licked and they break out. And they may not know they have the allergy. And they need an EpiPen, but you don't have one. That type of situation. And I didn't know if that was addressed in any of the schools that you have or if that came up.
Well, I think, no, I have not asked too deep about that, but I definitely can and will. I do think, that scenario playing out, a lot of our buildings do have access to EpiPens on site, even if they're not assigned to a kid. So in the event that would be an emergency like that, hopefully there would be an EpiPen in the building. But also, yes, like dog bites can cause a lot of, and she's an animal, right? They're animals, right? And just like the students in our building, they're unpredictable, right? And so I can train her to the best of my ability. I can expose her to as many things as possible, right? But we don't know. So yeah, it's a good question. Thank you.
For me, it's more, obviously the other place have worked out those logistics, no need to reinvent the wheel on that. For me, it's more also how are we going to we would want a way to get waivers out because you would want parents to sign. Anyone who would have in contact with a dog, to sign out, does my kid have an allergy, to just kind of give a release there. It would be the logistics part that I think would be the most difficult, but not certainly not prohibitive, but just one of those.
And I think Crete-Monee, I did ask about that. They send that out as part of their registration process. So when families register in person, it's embedded in the online registration and the paper registration. It's in there, and so they see it. They have to sign off on it. I know there's probably other pieces to that, but that is, I think, what they do.
Jonathan?
I think my wonder, thank you for all the information. Clearly, from your perspective as a social worker, there's a little more flexibility in your schedule as well when it comes to responding to crises, et cetera. My question for the team would be, if we moved in this direction, would we have to put into our policy specific roles in buildings that could be handlers versus a fourth grade teacher versus a kindergarten teacher? Because those roles are very different throughout the day. Would we have to designate, school psych, school social workers, et cetera? Because I'm not sure how you would be able to decipher one role versus another in a building as to who could be a handler or not be a handler.
I think it's a really good question. The people that I have talked to, right, at Crete Monee, they're all people who have designated spaces, right? So I think of like a classroom, and that's not a designated space, right? Because, I mean, it is the teacher's classroom, right? But even at our building, we have teachers who float, right? And from classroom to classroom, so they don't have one set room. Also, I think of classrooms as kind of belonging to students as well, right? And so I think like their district administrative person has an office at the district level. Their dean of students has an office. Their social worker has an office. So I don't know what that would look like, but I think it is a good point that the dog really does need a space to have that break and have time. So I think it's a good point. A classroom teacher, I think, would be tricky.
Any other questions for Christy? Well, we appreciate you sharing. It sounds like we have some research to do. Maybe we can work with Fraser on potentially.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure that this needs to be a standalone policy. As I look at Crete Monee's website, they don't have a standalone policy for this. I don't think that you were able to find one for Muhammad either. We've typically done some with respect to service animals, right, that are assigned to particular students to help them. I mean, it's something that we can all talk about, but maybe it's more along the lines of this is the direction that the board wants to go. A program that comes with a certain established set of administrative procedures that will address all the liability issues, some of what you raised in terms of the handler versus, right, you're the only one, you're trained, you're the only one that can take her to do the therapy tasks, I guess, for lack of a better word. But a handler could come in and help assist with the animal. I mean, I think it could address all of those things, and I'm not convinced as we sit here right now that it has to be a separate and distinct board policy. Okay.
I just saw you over there.
Hello.
So would it be easier to do it as, from like a legal standpoint, to do it as like a third party? Coming in, like a contract with, some sort of a contract agreement with a third party, so it's not technically like a district?
Well, I mean, I guess you could, but how does that work? You are proposing that you are the, right? You are the handler. It's you, Christy, and Iris, right? The team.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So I don't know.
You can't bring her in as part of like, I don't know, curriculum.
I mean, I think that's an avenue we can explore, certainly, as opposed to doing it via policy. Typically, we see policies that deal with, again, I said the service animal aspect, right? As opposed to the therapy dog. But, we can look at doing it as a policy. We can look at doing it as a separate contract. We could look at doing it more along the lines of an administrative procedure. I think we have options if that's how you want to go.
We have, as it relates to service animals, we don't have a policy on it. It really falls under Section 6120 as an administrative procedure. So we have some kind of model to maybe work off of, but I think something we can discuss. We'd have to talk to our insurance company to look what those liabilities are. But we appreciate you coming tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
And if there's anything that I can send, like I said, I don't know if it was not well embedded in there, but I think there are some policies at Crete Monee.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to, maybe not on their website, but I would be happy to at least send it to Sherry and she could forward it out to you guys, if that would be helpful.
That'd be good. I had to request access to a couple of them, so we'll see if they send them to me.
Okay.
Denied.
Have it specific when you talk to them, they may not, because I can look at their policy, so we can see their official board policy.
Microphone.
Microphone.
Oh. We can see their official board policy, so they don't specifically call it out as a therapy animal policy. So what you may want to ask them is, do they have it buried under some other name that we just need to find?
Okay.
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 So-
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy. All right, the next item on the agenda is 6130 Gifted Program. Now, there weren't any specific changes recommended. If I'm reading that, was it just more of a general discussion that we wanted to have?
General discussion, and kind of looking, I mean, I've looked at the various other districts. I mean, there's the basic press policy, which is, I think, fine. I think it's more looking for wording around different changes that we've maybe talked about. I know the board, I can at least, I guess, speak to a number of, a majority on the board feels very strongly about bringing back options for more rigorous classes. I've been on this for quite some time. It's not going to be new, but going into English, freshman, sophomore year, bringing back tracking, as well as the sciences, allowing for students to have an opportunity to take an accelerated or an honors level class instead of just a basic class with all kids, in order to better prepare for your, especially with like the biology, in order to better prepare for AP Prep Bio. English, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but our kids are not coming out of here knowing fundamentals of writing, and I've heard it over and over and over from parents, especially a lot of those who've gone to college and don't know how to write a paper. My own child called me today on that. And was grilled by her teacher, like, you've never written a 5-page research paper? Nope, never done one. All through Central, and she graduated last year. I think we have I think in theory, when this was brought in, and I had talked to Scott Filkins at length as one of the people who had really brought it forward, I think in theory, the idea works. In practice, and what we're actually, the reality that we're dealing with, it's not working the way that it should, and are more of our honors and accelerated kids in the ELA area are being hindered and compromised a little bit by what we currently have. I mean, and it's not something that I would fault the teachers or even the idea. I just don't think, I mean, even if you look at our drop in SAT scores for ELA, which would have been the first class that had D-tracking last year, would have been the first class that went in with D-tracking freshman year. It does not appear to have the intended outcome. And so I guess the question is, and Tony, he remembers when it was 101, 103, 105 English? When we were there?
I am a product of Unit 4 schools, but I remember very little from when I left. But it's been a long time. But I believe so, yeah, that there was more than one level of math and English. I imagine that's fairly common.
And as well with especially too with the biology, because the AP Prep Bio, which is taken as a freshman, generally taken as a freshman, leads into AP biology, those kids who would be taking AP biology are not on that curriculum path, because it is a different, at least at Central, from discussions, is a little bit different. So I think the question is integrating into our policy something that allows for every kid, and not, and back to, the self-contained gifted, I think everyone's realized that's kind of outdated, that's not the best way, but a way that kids are able to, that they're not kept back by prerequisites. If you have a kid that's a savant in math and they're ready to take Calc 3 as 8th graders, let them. Same with English, same with science, things like that. I think we've lost a lot of students out of our district who have, they're people that, some of the university and hospitals, the parents will take their kids up to Chicago and rent an apartment and keep them up there for the week and then come back down so they can get into a more rigorous curriculum. And I think we need to appreciate that and recognize that within our district to bring, to challenge and provide, equity with all of our kids, from our ones who need the most services with SPED, all the way up to our, child with a 220 IQ that's doing complex robotics and everything else.
So I guess I'll ask, what language would you propose or want us to consider as it relates to programs for the gifted, specifically to this policy? I see that, I noticed that kind of what you're talking about, I think, is identified in the next policy, which is 6135, accelerated placement programs, which really talks to, and we didn't include this in the packet because it wasn't an agenda item, but I think what you're saying really falls more in line with that policy. Mike, do you want to maybe talk a little bit more to that?
Yeah, that was my feeling as well, that the state does not require us to have gifted programming, but we are required to have an acceleration policy and practices within the district. And so I also have asked David Reif to be here from the secondary level, John L. Baskett from the elementary level, their directors of teaching and learning, to help answer any questions if we'd like to have them come up to the table as well. Just let us know.
Could I ask a question, Mike? How do we accelerate middle schoolers for ELA?
We do not have, when you do not have an honors level or an accelerated level, then it is what we have for the students. It's at their grade
And that
level.
would be the same for high school, right?
We have that for math at the middle level, but we do not have that for ELA or science.
So
or
there is
social
no
studies.
acceleration testing for ELA at middle school or high school?
We use the state tests for placement and accelerated programs. That's part of the Acceleration Placement Act that came through recently over the last couple of years that helps determine high school classes that are available. But in order to meet our graduation requirements, we have courses that are required per grade level for graduation. And so if there's not an accelerated version and that's a class that's required for graduation, then that's the class that students would take. So all freshmen need to take freshman English, for example.
but
There is
for-
not an honors or accelerated option. We did have that in the past. Ms. Holder referred to, we've had multiple levels and tracks in the past. Several years ago, we had 2 levels. We went from 3 to 2 to now 1.
Why?
At the freshman
So
level.
you can accelerate at elementary. You could,
You can,
accelerated
we
by a
have, sorry, we
subject
do have
or grade.
we have grade level acceleration, I should have said that. Subject level acceleration at the middle level is available in math. Grade level acceleration is available at the elementary level and at the middle level. And then for high school, we have placements in accelerated programs or courses, honors level courses, for lack of a better word, yeah.
thank you, that explanation was
Sophomore,
helpful.
junior, and senior level.
But not freshman year for the ELA. We don't have, if you're a freshman, you
Correct.
coming in and you say, I want to take AP Lang, or you're not and maybe AP governs that, but we don't have an accelerated program for that. And if I have, I mean,
For freshman English, yes.
I've
and-
got one
and
more parent calling
freshman
or
science.
putting forth, even before I got on the board, I mean, complaints about the fact, I mean, my own kid was doing coloring sheets, not because of the fault of the teacher, but because if you came, from a school or what, and you know how to, generally read and write, and it goes to a bigger problem of like what the inequities from the bottom of how kids are in different, how kids are at very different levels in ELA coming into high school. But I think, to be blunt about it, to me and to others, it kind of looks like an approach of let's just, on paper, bring kind of the top down, lower the standards, and then make a very superficial surface level equity look, but it's not really there. And I would say math, on the other side, math where kids are, there is accelerated, and they're every bit as, at the same level as their peers coming out of, I mean, there's math and there's math, but, yeah, I think we have historically, even when I was there, been not as strong in writing, and that's back when we did have different levels.
Yes, I know Dr. Kozlowski's got something he would like to add, but I'd say it's really the opposite of rather than lowering the bar, and I understand, I hear what you're saying, and you feel like that is people's lived experience and your experience, but the goal is indeed to increase and raise the ceiling for all students to have access to our highest expectations, when in fact the tracked classes can limit access to what is available or what students are able to participate in and engage in, be it enrichment opportunities, be it exposure to grade level and accelerated texts and projects and writing experiences and opportunities, right? So our goal in D-tracking was to increase the access for all students to be able to have a similar experience. It was never to lower the bar and shoot for the middle. And so an A in a D-tracked class should be what an honors A is or had been in the past. And so that was the goal. We understand that can vary, and we have work to do, of course. It can vary by teacher, by class, and it is a big challenge. We understand that trying to teach and differentiate is a big challenge, and that's why we brought forward several of the programs that we have in the last couple of years to better help teachers to better differentiate and meet the needs of all their students. But I wanted to let Dr. Kozlowski get in as well. Yeah.
So listening to the conversation, I think my wonder would be, what has our enrollment, since there is no longer an accelerated track for freshman year, sophomore year, we know that there is AP language, AP literature, dual credit, all of those courses, right, in the English cohort of classes. What has our enrollment in those classes looked like since D-tracking was put in place? And also, what does that achievement look like for those students leaving those classes? Is D-tracking affecting their ability to score on AP language, AP Lit, exams, getting a 3 or a better? Or is it impacting them and they're not finding success in that case? Because as I sit and listen to a student who's in college now, who I would think was maybe in some of those courses, if they found success in those courses, the D-tracking might not affect them in those courses. But if they're not finding success in those courses, then I think that's a different conversation of what's happening in their freshman and sophomore year as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have seen a dramatic increase in the number of students taking our AP courses across the board, not just in English, but especially in English, as well as dual credit. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of times we just focus on College Board or AP offerings that are available, and we have increased the number of courses that are available, but also we've seen the enrollment continue to increase, and the diversity of students taking those courses continue to increase while maintaining or exceeding the marks that we were getting in previous years on AP exams. And so we have that longitudinal data that we're able to share with the board or with, at an upcoming board meeting or at an upcoming policy meeting. I'm happy to bring that forward again, or Mr. Casillas, I can share that as part of a board update if you'd like. We also have Mr. Reif here, who would be able to bring some of that data. I know that we have that on file if you wanted to bring that up and give you some specifics here tonight. Okay, so it's up to you all how you'd like, but what you'd like. But that is data that we're tracking, and we wanted to make sure that we're looking not only at AP enrollment data or AP scores, which are both up significantly over the last several years, but also I know, Ms. Holder, you talked about our SAT scores, and so we know they were down last year, and we're excited to talk about where those scores are back again. It's a single cohort of students that we can follow, and we can look at IAR data, which is the test that students will take from 3rd to 8th grade, and see where those projections might be for any given cohort. We also have 9th grade and 10th graders taking SAT or ACT tests that help give us indications of where that particular grade level cohort would be. And we'll be bringing some of those updates to the board as well in the upcoming months, probably in November or December, whenever Mr. Casillas would like us to bring that forward. But we're seeing those scores come back up, so, rather than staying lower. And I wouldn't attribute it solely to the detracking efforts. Is there work that we still need to do to continue to differentiate for students in a detracked environment? Most definitely. But that has been our goal, is to make sure that we've increased access to each and every student, and that is truly a more equitable learning environment than the levels that we had in the past that were capped because of enrollment. We don't ever say a kid cannot take an honors class or an AP class. Our enrollment is always open. A lot of districts don't have policies like that. They'll say you need to place in order to take the class. The only time that's true is for a placement exam to take a dual credit class and earn the dual credit. You can still enroll in the class, but in order to earn the dual credit, you have to pass Parkland's placement exam to get in and receive that dual credit. But other than that, all of our classes are open as long as you meet the prerequisites. And we set those prerequisites, and we'll follow guidance from College Board. We'll follow guidance from our teachers in setting those. Yes, Ms. Holder.
So as far as looking at the data, it's still new because the first year we did detracking, the seniors just graduated. So we would have really AP Lit, AP Lang on those, and then one AP Lit from last year's junior, or this year's seniors. And then switching from SAT to ACT, that's gonna.
Sure it is.
That's gonna throw everything up in, yes, so that's sort of like pre-COVID versus after COVID data. You know, everyone's improving on after COVID. So obviously that's, yeah. I guess my other question with that, as you said, we're grading it to the highest level honors student to get an A. That would seem like, again, you're not, if you're truly using that model, which I'll be honest, I don't think that that's being necessarily used based on standards of that versus like what you need to do to get an A in like an AP Lit or an AP Lang at an honors level. But my question is, if that's your standard, then a student, by no fault of their own, whatever they had in their education coming up, whatever, who may have, you know, learning disabilities, dyslexia, things like that, they're coming in, it would be nearly impossible for them to earn an A. If this bar is standard, if the bar is truly your highest honor kids, A is what it used to, or what it would be in a true honors class, then that would mean you would have, you know, a small group getting A's and then a number of kids on the other end of the spectrum getting F's or D's, and then, you know, a bunch in the middle, and that's not what, I mean, I'm sure you could pull the data on that, but I don't think that's what you find. As I said, I've gone through almost 4 years of the detracking of freshman, sophomore English, and I don't have criticisms of the teachers. I don't have, it is just something that is not, it is a lot of behaviors being managed, and your kids who know, who are, you know, who would technically be on the honors track or more, or aren't, they're not getting challenged. They're doing stuff they did in middle school. So I guess the question is is there a way to address that, and what is the harm in going back to the different level classes? If you leave it open to anybody. I mean, we do have the policy that Dan was just referring to that says you need to go to the next available level of class. What is the harm in doing that?
I don't want to be the only one sharing, so I mean, if we'd like to invite John L. Baskett, David Reif up to the table. Dr. Ward is also here, and I know that she's been instrumental in a lot of this work. So I'd just love to invite them to add their perspective. Another reality that we have to face as a district is that we knew as we did our work for the needs assessment leading up to the district's strategic plan, it was identified as priorities in the strategic plan that we needed to address our achievement gaps that we were continuing to see year after year in our academic outcome data. And rather than just put that weight on students and families, we had to look at our own structures and systems that we have as a district and identify the opportunity gaps that are also present in our structures and in our systems and in the communication tracks and paths that we had. So in some of the data and the research that we were doing leading up to these recommendations, after the strategic plan was published and during the needs assessment period, we recognized and did audits where our classes were becoming racially identifiable by track. We could list the races and ethnicities of students in a given course, 25 students in a room, and when 75 to 80% of the students are black and brown, we were able to say 100% of the time that this is a grade level class, a non-weighted, non-honors level class, and that was accurate each and every time. And we saw that in ELA, we saw that in science. We know that our enrollment trends of black and brown students in AP and dual credit classes were significantly below their white and Asian peers. We knew that part of what was happening when kids were registering for classes in 8th grade was having a tremendous impact on the enrollment trends that we were seeing throughout their high school and on their identities of themselves as a high school student, as an honor student, whatever that label means, other than a designation or an asterisk in a course catalog. And so those were the pieces, some of the data that we were looking at, knowing that we had to bear some of the responsibility of the structures and systems that were in place that were producing the achievement gaps that we were seeing in our data. We know that we still have a lot of work to do and that those gaps are still present. But it is our goal and what we're seeing with the enrollment trends, with the scores that we're seeing, that we believe we're making a difference. We know we have to continue to provide a high level of rigor for each and every one of our students. But that's when we talk more about the why, or we're looking at what might be the problem with going back. Those would be a couple of the pieces. In fact, it would be going back to past practices that were producing results that we were not proud of, and we knew we needed to address. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to John L., Dr. Ward, and David Reif. Just see what else I'd like to add. John L.?
I just want to clarify, Betsy, what you're really talking about is the stopping of the gatekeeping to different, so you'd have an additional option with no gatekeeping.
You would have an additional option with no gatekeeping, and also to the equity part that that we're talking about. I think what we're doing here, we have some serious equity issues with our black and brown students not achieving at that level where they should be. So, and it's very notable in math when you look all the way up the track, and I've said this a million times, when you hit AP Calculus, A, B, or BC, the last 2 years we've only had one black student in those classes combined out of both high schools. That to me is why we are somewhere along the line before they hit high school, they're being tracked, or there's a bias that you can't be in this class, or that you're not qualified. But just saying we're going to get rid of tracking and we're going to make all the classes look the same, that's not fixing the problem. It's truly not. It's just rearranging some things and making it look like it's equitable, but those students, the achievement gap it got better, but post-COVID, it continues to grow. And I mean, I don't know the reason for that, but again, for me, just saying, we need to make it, yes, those classes should be those classes should be heterogeneously mixed of people, but it's got to be because we hold the standards and we expect and we teach our students of color at the, same level that we teach our white and Asian students. But just saying, let's all throw everybody in a classroom and call it equity, to me, that's just window dressing.
So the reason I asked that is I think one of the, and I understand completely what you're saying, that, I do. I think one of the fears is because it's been so recently that we did have such inequities and that it was so racially identifiable that I think the fear is, have we evolved enough as a system to not go back to that? But what I do hear you saying is that some of the things that would safeguard against that, thinking with where we're at now with one track at that freshman year, things like scaffolding of instruction, things like differentiation of instruction, those are really important things. And the question, what I'm hearing you say, is that maybe those things really aren't in place at the level that they need to be. And that may be the piece that we have to really shore up to make sure that our teachers do have the strategies. I know one of the things that we've been talking about is co-teaching, and co-teaching could be a place where we really shore up some of those pieces to help, one, differentiate and scaffold for those kids that aren't accessing that curriculum in the way they need to be. AVID, I know Angela is such a huge champion of AVID. AVID and the strategies and the components within that are a way to do that. I just think maybe what we need to do is, that's on us as a system to continue to really help support teachers and get them into that. I mean, those I think are some of the things that will help, but I believed your lived experience that it's probably not where it is. I mean, I will say at elementary, we try and we're trying to differentiate and to scaffold, but we know that there are so many new teachers, there are so many levels of, we have a really young teaching staff these days, young as in their years of experience, and some of these things are things that takes time to develop. And so how can we accelerate our learning for our teachers so that they can best support our kids? Maybe a way to address some of this.
Yes, I mean, I agree with that, and again, it's not that it is no criticism on the teachers, because I've solicited feedback from, extremely young teachers, and then also teachers who have been teaching for years and years and years in the district, who give positive, and I think everybody has said, in theory, it was a really good idea. Like, in theory, it worked. In practice, I don't know if it's actually working, and again, that's from fixing all the problems all the way down, all the way coming up. It's not a one track, one fix, but I do think getting whether it is true or the perception, whatever, not providing the rigor is one of the main things leading to people leaving the district. Yeah. Going to, not that other areas have the greatest, there might be the perception that it's better, but other school districts have accelerated tracking, Urbana, Mahomet, and then you have the really people who don't get into uni that will go up to IMSA and the Chicago schools, but those are, we're losing those people.
I would say that, one, I respect your opinion, and I'm not sure what the diversity starts to look like when you get into Muhammad and how they're slicing
yes,
it. Right? But I do think that there's an extreme on both ends, right? The homogenous, population in tracking students does not mean that you accelerate rigor, right? No more than having students all in one class, right? It's both ends of the spectrum. So here's what I found, having 31-year-old who graduated out, right? And a younger one who came out. My 31-year-old was not in an accelerated track all the way through. She did write a research paper with Papa Noop, I think, over at Centennial, right? I think a lot of that is about rigor and expectations, whether you're in an accelerated track or not. We should be raising the ceiling. What we're seeing for some of our students is there was not a separate or different, distinct teaching, and a lot of times not even the resources. It was a sorting of our kids. And I think that becomes a part that bleeds out, right? Like how do we sort our students here in the district? Now, putting them together doesn't necessarily mean that you've magically solved it, right? We have to change the mindsets of what it means in the skill set to differentiate and to be able to raise the rigor. If I have a student with an IEP and an ELA class, they have a right to have certain scaffolds. But the standards should be the same. It should be based on state standards. It should be rigorous. And some students are going to go at 5 pages and get the research paper, out. Another student's probably, maybe they're going to have an outline that's laid out for them to help scaffold them to write that paper. But that's the difference that you would see with a student having access and a student who could do it without those supports. Those same supports go to college, right? They get those same rights in a university setting. But I think a lot of it is our pedagogy and our practices and what is it that we're trying to do. I feel like our teachers on the other end were dying when we had our students sorted because they were feeling like it was only management on the other end. But.
Can I ask, how do we sort the students? Angela and Mike have both described situations where the students were sorted. I think you gave an example where you got 25 kids in the room, they're all black and brown, and you could just know what grade level or what level of curriculum they were being taught. How do they get there? Is that the district deciding? Just help me understand. I don't understand that process.
Well, and we've never had an application portion other than when we're talking about grade level acceleration, when we're talking about moving into whole grade, or we're talking about our acceleration policy with state testing. But we always we'll have our recommendations. But we actually moved away from teacher recommendations. Right now, the state has an Acceleration Act where we're going to automatically enroll students if they demonstrate proficiency or exceed expectations on state assessments in given courses and content areas. That's a relatively new state law. But we've never said to a student or a family who wants to take an honors level course that, no, you cannot take that. Now, I'll have Mr. Reif talk a little bit about that. In math, you need to show that proficiency. You're not just going to skip a year of math and we hope everything's going to be okay. We're going to have that conversation with the family. If they're, but if there's an honors option or an AP option and a grade level option, and the student really wants to take the class, we invite them, we encourage them. We actually have some policies or procedures in place that would protect the student so that if they try that class and they're struggling with that class and they've come in for help, that they can move down a level at the high school level, move down without penalty up until the end of the first quarter. And so we're trying to bring in a lot more, and we've had that in existence for the last several years, where give it a shot, try that more rigorous option. And if you're struggling, and we don't want it to be a major penalty or a deterrent, like all of a sudden you're going to come in for 3 days and you have to make your decision real fast, stay in the class, give it a shot, try our reteach, retake policy. We have those also in place where once you take the test, if you are struggling and you need help, come in, relearn it, learn it again, and then take the assessment for a higher grade. So we have a lot of pieces that we've been putting in place to support students rather than say it's a sink or swim, you're in or you're not. We're not making a lot of those decisions. What we're looking at is why didn't we have more black and brown students enrolling in our honors level courses when we had those tracks? And part of it was they were signing up when they were in 8th grade, in the middle of their 8th grade year, signing up for courses that they weren't even in the high school yet. And so
well, that's the
we were
heart
trying
of my
to
question.
find
Who's doing that? When you say the 8th grader was signing up, I don't have an 8th grader yet. I've never been through this, except for when I was an 8th grader, and I don't remember. So the 8th grader's in the counselor's office or something, and they're helping them decide what their freshman year is going to look like?
Well, we have, the 8th grade, the high school counselors work and come over to the middle schools. We work with our middle school counselors to talk about the advising for high school, and then the families get the information and the support. We have freshman orientation nights to help answer questions about what classes are available, but ultimately the students enroll. And I think so that's part of it, is how do we make sure that our families have the information and the resources they need to be able to take the classes or to understand what the different classes are. Every student, has that conversation with their family and with counselors as needed about what's the best path or what are my interests and then what's available. By moving to a more detracked freshman year. Math has been tracked from 6th grade all the way through senior year, and we have not changed that. But in ELA and science and social studies, we did for freshman year. And we've kept those AP and honors classes after freshman year so that everyone has that freshman year heterogeneous experience where they understand what high school is. They're working with their high school counselor. They see the different paths, and we're able to present that and work with them a little bit more closely, rather than in that challenging transition year from 8th to 9th grade. I don't know how well I said all of that, but I'd like to just make sure that
And I
Mr.
just
Wright
want to
from
jump in
Dr.
from a
Ward can
historical
add to it.
perspective. There were multiple ways that a lot of that sorting happened. Some of it was about recommendations, what someone else sees in you, right? Some of it was about the grades the students carried out. Can I take that next level of rigor if I'm a C student, right? The other piece was about families, access, that social awareness and capital. Who knows to ask for this class to your students in Algebra 1 by 8th grade so that they can be on track for a pre-calc by the time they're in high school. And then some of it was self-selecting. You did have students who would go in and would say, it's a fiercely competitive environment. Nobody looks like me in this particular environment. We had that too. You get 1 or 2 students to say, never mind, I don't belong here because I don't see myself in this space. So it's not all on one person, right? So that's where you start talking about what the system looks like, right? Who said you're a smart cookie, whose parents have said you're a smart cookie, right? And who walks into a room to feel like I'm one of these smart cookies. So I think it was multiple layers of how some of that sorting happened, to be fair.
Whereas math's done by testing, which seems to be a lot more of an easy, or a lot less subjective.
Yeah, I think a lot less subjective, but at the same time, when you do that with our data in our district, leads to racially identifiable classes, right? And so when we were tracking back at the middle level in ELA, we did look at data to place students, and the kids with the best MAP scores went into our accelerated classes. The kids with lower MAP scores didn't. And we wondered, when you walked through reading classrooms, you could tell based upon who's in the room, is this an honors reading class or not an honors reading class, right? And we wondered, what if you take away the faces of the kids? What if you just put it on paper, right? And every single class, every single time, we could identify, even just on paper without seeing the kids physically, that it was an honors reading class or a non-honors reading class, right? And so when we did this work back in the day, right, we read a book called On the Same Track, and 2 of their metrics are the classes racially identifiable? Because if they are, your tracking system's broken, right? And are you actually accelerating the lower track, right? Because the idea of tracking is, hey, kids who are in that upper track are getting what they need, they're being challenged, but kids in the lower track, their needs are being met, and we're closing that gap, right? And so we did a little bit, it's nothing like formal in any way, I'm not a researcher, but we did a little bit of data dive, and we were actually in our middle school reading classes, the gap was widening according to our MAP data, right? Our honors kids were growing at a faster rate than our non-honors kids were. We were literally expanding that gap, right, according to our data. And so what's a bold move that you can make?
Is there a problem with that? If the top is growing faster than the bottom is growing, is that a problem?
Can I give an example, though? That is a problem when you enter a group of students like your AVID students who came in and were accelerating faster than both of those realms. And they were accelerating faster because they were introduced and pushed into an accelerated space. Nothing different. Middle of the road test scores possibly, right? Wouldn't have been the kid who would have been selected, but their growth was accelerating and outpacing. And so what we understood is that as far as our pedagogy and practices needed to change, the level of rigor needed to be expanded and open to all students, along with supports. So when you have something like that comes in, it debunks the myth that everybody's just growing at the rate that they're capable of, right? Because we took a group and said, you're not the typical kid that will go into this class, and we're going to insert you in. And then nationally, you can post our data, and you're going to see them grow faster. So we were sorting. And we were also leaving some students out of the opportunity. And so I hear both sides too, right? I think we had that conversation too. When you talk about a lot of your students that are highly accelerated, your truly gifted students, that's, research says it's 1 or 2% of your population, right? And we got to a point, once your parents figured out, right, or you figured out, I can get in this classroom, 60 to 70% of your kids were all in squads in 2 or 3 classes, and then those who had nobody advocating were were left in the other classes. So that became about, right?
It was
learning
like
how to
getting into
navigate the
college
system.
yes, that's the self-contained gifted is not
Yeah.
what the, I mean, and also to me, also you have kids who are really good at math, maybe not as strong in ELA, vice versa, different skill sets, but I think the bigger issue here that I see with the equity is we're trying to fix something that's been going on all the way from the bottom up systemically and saying, till we get, why is it racially identifiable before we even hit there? Where's the problem from K all the way up that we are now able to racially identify based on what they've academically achieved at that point.
Yeah.
But to me, though, the question becomes, okay, and looking at some of the data, our top level is not growing like it is in the green, kind of, we're seeing less and less of it, and I guess I don't think it's fair to say to those kids, well, just because, you've got it, you're fine, you're in the green, we're going to focus here. I think we need to allow every student, regardless of race, demographic, socioeconomic status, any of that, to say, if you want to be challenged, challenge you, because some of your people on the top, 0.05%, the truly gifted kids also probably have they're probably not the easiest kids either to teach.
And some of them are sitting in classrooms, even if you accelerated them, they might still be bored, right? Like your top class. We do have
Some of them might still be
we have
bored,
some
but
of
do we
those
even
students,
have, I
too.
mean, you've got those probably one or two in each class that are like off the charts, but do we have a way to really push, and I just think that is,
Yeah, I pulled up, Mike mentioned our AP data, so I pulled up our AP Lang, that's our junior English course, right? And our test scores, and 81.5% of our test takers scored a 3 or above. That's above the state and global average last year. Our average was a 3.33, again, above the state and global average in AP Lang. I know families and students are putting in a ton of work to make that happen. But when you look at enrollment in that course, 4 years ago, which probably coincides with when we detracked, we doubled the number of black students enrolled in the course. We've gone from 7 years ago when the course began with 133 kids up to 332 students altogether in that course. But it's still a racially identifiable course, right? Black students make up 20% of that course.
how many students, so like detracking started on that so is that the junior class? So do you have last year's data?
Yeah,
on
this
that?
is last year's data.
And the year before those would be the two relevant ones. How many total kids actually took the AP exam those 2 years?
Yeah, so last year it would have been, in SY24, so 2 years ago would have been 185.
Took the exam?
The exam last year it was 232.
Okay, and what were the,
Yeah, so the college, what were the scores? Comparing the
yes, how
scores
many
between the
fives
two
we
years.
have, fours, threes?
Yeah, so the College Board renormed, right? So keep in mind, and I've got all of this in a table I'm happy to share, right? So the average across the state went from a 2.87 to a 3.26, which is a jump that you don't see in College Board unless they renorm a test, right? Our average went from a 2.77, just below the state average, up to a 3.33, just above the state average.
And see that, yeah, looking at the state averages.
Right, so it looks like a huge jump. It was a huge jump across the state. Our kids grew even more, right? Our scores jumped even more than the state and global did. So it's one of the courses where we were below the state average in our scores from SY24. And then this past year, our scores came up, we're back above the state average. 81.5% of kids getting a 3 or above is the highest we've been ever since the course was started 7 years ago. And so we know we haven't done it perfectly. I think we all want to continue to work hard. It's a very complex issue, like you mentioned.
It's a complex it's not a...
Right, it's not an easy fix. And detracking by any means is not like, there's not very many people out there willing to take a bold move like that, right? But I
What's
think
the demographic of the kids getting a 3.5 or above?
that I don't have, but I'm happy to find.
Okay, that would be interesting. I like to see, I mean, based on the state or the last year's report card, our achievement gap, I think it shrank a smidge in math, but it grew in ELA.
Yeah, and so just going back to the math, I think it's an interesting, we're having a lot of conversation around ELA, but math is like the area where we, as a state, haven't really grown much, right? And I think it's interesting, I was with my kiddo the other day, and, she was talking to a peer, and the peer's like, I'm in accelerated math in 6th grade. My kiddo's not in middle school yet. She's like, what does that mean? And the other kid said, well, that's the math for smart people. And as a parent, my heart sank, because I don't know that my kid's going to be in that class. And I don't want her to take with her that she's not smart. And so those messages that we're sending to our kids are hard, right? And I think part of this came from we want to make sure that kids believe in themselves and that they're not defined by the course that they're in. In math, that's still the case in 6th grade in our district, right? But I hope there's some mindset work that we've done that has helped kids to believe that they're capable of achieving in an AP Lang class junior year.
And once you're tracked, can you, like in other classes, like, can you hop out of that? Like, that's my issue that was my issue with the gifted program in general, like 2nd grade, and it became, like Angela said, parents are like, okay, my kid's gifted, we're gonna practice for this test, and you're gonna get in the gift, whether you're gifted or not. And it was, very racially and socioeconomic identifiable on it. But
that's our issue in math. Like, we start many more kids tracked in that upper level than what get to calculus BC, calculus AB, right? At some point along the way, typically accelerated algebra 2, accelerated pre-calc, kids tend to drop into the regular level version of that course.
But why aren't we just having a district-wide standard of 8th grade, you take algebra? That's not accelerated, that's...
Like, everybody takes out. There are districts that do that. I don't think the research that I've seen out there isn't conclusive as to whether or not that works. And I think there's actually a pretty large group that would say that there's actually negative ramifications from doing that. Whether or not that's conclusive or not, it would be interesting to say we're going to accelerate for everybody. I think that's what we tried to do as we detract, was say we want a rigorous experience for all without calling it honors English for all, right? I think it's an interesting idea. I would say, like, we probably have to do more research around, enough people have done it that there's studies out there, I'm sure, that say whether or not it's been successful.
I mean, if you're going to put everyone in and call, and the goal is to, from the self-esteem aspect, which is a huge component. Are you in the smart math? Especially in middle school, I've heard, from my, I'm in the smart math, so-and-so's not the smart math. Who's in this? Yeah, but to keep it, and you're not going to be able to, they'll figure it out. The kids will figure it out, but especially in something like ELA, well, everyone's got, creative thoughts and things like that, putting it on, let everyone think they're in the honors class.
And that's what, that was, Mike spoke to it earlier, like, that was our intention, right? With, like, obviously we don't want kids to sink in that, so honors math, but with more differentiated supports, more scaffolds, we just didn't, as we were doing it, decide to call it that by name, right?
I think calling it by name would appease, not that I don't think that the obviously massive curriculum changes, but I think, okay, fine, you've been tracked in math, but I gave the example of African American Studies as largely, or AP African American Studies. Both my kids take it, one of the best classes they've taken as far as what I've seen, like from the syllabus and what they're doing. It's the most like AP classes on par with college classes, and those kids, they're doing great. And it's not because it's easy. It's a hard class, but it's...
And that's a shout out to Miss Whiteley, who's incredible. Done incredible work getting that off the table.
87% of your kids passed the test.
100% last year. Who took the AP African American Studies test, got a 3 or above.
That
not a ton
class
of kids, but...
And the way, everything done there was taught, but I'm like, you have kids that it is not a racially identifiable class. It's the other way around. So to me, it's, why aren't we just saying, putting these students, if we're upping the expectations, I guess.
Right. And that's what I think that's really good, because we do want to up the expectations. Like, we want all of our kids to be college and career ready when they leave our doors and head to whatever their post-secondary, career or college goals are. And so I think that's something that we all agree on, hopefully. Sorry.
Tony, and then I want to say something.
I have a general comment from my perspective as a board member, And I have a question for the staff who deal with our curriculum. So my general thought, Sherry sent out this list of the policies we were going to discuss tonight, and I note that we've talked about this one for about an hour, maybe more. So I don't want to take up a lot of time. The general thought is, I think that there are people in our community who are attracted to the district when they see that the district is appealing to their children. And for some of the people in our community, those children are the very high performers who are going to go to an Ivy League school or going to go to a Big Ten school and do great. And some of those families, when they're at the decision point about where will my child spend their high school years, move to Mahomet. Or they buy a house in St. Joe, or they decide not to come here at all. I think that those people include recruits to Carl and the University of Illinois and industry who have a high-performing student. They know they have a gifted student, and they do not want to risk that their student's going to come here and not be challenged. So I think that the gifted policy, the policy that's known as the gifted policy, is kind of like advertising, how many parks a community has or something. It's like something you'd put on the brochure. I'd like to know from the staff whether we can accomplish the same thing. Otherwise, it sounds like you're all agreeing that we can. The suggestion on this little list that Ms. Atkins sent out was that me and Betsy wanted to bring this policy change to the group tonight, and the recommendation was to go back to the press policy. I suppose that would be my recommendation in the absence of anything else. I'd get rid of the custom policy and go back to the press policy for all the reasons this committee has discussed in the past. But tell me why that's a bad idea, or should we just get rid of it altogether? What are your thoughts as educators on the policy recommendation for tonight? What should we do here? Nothing?
Do you guys have access to the original press policy? I think it,
It was attached.
We're referring to 130 or 135.
130, not 135.
Not 135.
Yeah, so 6, 130.
In there, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's the proposed draft program for gifted that was dated 10/20/2025. Is that what we're?
No.
No.
So our current policy was last adopted March 27,
Yes, that's the one.
2023. This is a press sample that was attached there. And so the last time press updated it was, does it even?
2021.
Yeah, November 2021.
Correct.
So the question as it relates to policy, because I'll just say this generally, I think we've had this conversation. We had this conversation on 2-on-2s. We have this conversation in cabinet. We've had this conversation in instructional cabinet. I know we have this conversation in our teaching and learning meetings. It's something that we are going to continue to have a conversation. I think we absolutely need to. That's the process, right? To continually look at what we're doing and whether it's having the intended effect on our students. For policy purposes, right, I don't know that we need to take any action that's going to affect those discussions. But specific to Mr. Bruno's question, does the press sample, is that more in line with what our current practice is in compared to our old policy that we did update in 2027 of March 27 of 2023? But really, I think if I remember correctly, the updates were just on the lower half where we talked about phasing out the self-contained. The sections above, we really didn't tweak too much.
Yes.
Correct. And I think that was, if we're going to have a policy about programming for the gifted, we still had gifted programming or students enrolled in gifted programming, and we no longer have a gifted elementary program, a self-contained gifted program. And so I think that language was to represent the fact that there is a program, but it's being phased out. Now that it's phased out, I question if we even need a policy around gifted programming, or if we were going to keep this one, maybe changing the phrase of the first sentence there to shall and change it to may, if that's something that we want to leave open. Everything else, I mean, it's pretty similar to what we had in the past, and I think then it gives us the flexibility to look at what we want to do and moving forward. That would be my only
Well, it's
quick
pretty-
recommendation.
This one's pretty open, like, open to,
Yes, I just,
lets you do whatever you want, or not have one, not do it, leaves it open. What I'm reading, if I'm coming in as one of those parents, or, tiger parenting, maybe I am. But I'm reading this and I'm like, oh no. Like, if I'm somebody looking for, my child needs to be labeled gifted or things like that, I'm reading this and I'm like, all right.
current one?
The current one, I'm
Yes,
like,
I agree.
Muhammad here, or not even that, Chicago, or I'm taking a job in Indy, if I'm coming into Carl or university, and I think we just go back to this, which gives a lot more flexibility for you guys.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the new one. That's what I was saying. I don't have any problem with the new one. I think I was just trying to explain the rationale behind the previous policy, that we did have gifted programming. There weren't going to be any new students admitted into the program. Those were the things that we wanted to articulate at that time. I'm fine with this. I think just for clarity, since we don't have a self-contained gifted program at the elementary level, would that change from shall to may be more clear? That was my only note, but I'm in favor of moving to the press policy if that's just with that one note.
I was going to say, I like the press policy in part because it does footnote the changes, because there have been changes in legislation with the Untapped Potential Act and the Acceleration Act policy. So, those are footnoted, legally those are protective of you because press has put this out. I do think the may to shall is kind of nice just because currently that is not where we are with those lower grades. We don't have a universal identification process right now for gifted education. So that's why we need to make the change from shall to may. The other piece I would say is that it does provide the opportunity, because right now there is no funding available for gifted education from the state. But you have to have some kind of gifted policy in place to receive the gifted funding if it were to become available. Now, in our present situation, I don't know that's going to happen anytime soon. But just in case, it's nice to have that option to know if you have something. And when you look at our previous policies, because I went back into the Untapped Potential Act, went into all the different components, and we really had processes, so this would be in admin procedures, we really had things that addressed every one of those things. So the nice thing is, if it would come into play, we could easily reinstate some type of universal testing. There was already an appeals process. There was already there was an achievement way to go into it. There was a cognitive ability way to go into it. So there's so many different aspects that were already within that it would be an easy shift to make if those funds become available.
It seems to me that you all have thought about this a great deal and of course pride yourselves in your professional success in teaching children at all levels, and it sounds to me like a program you have here. And it seems like it's a program for gifted learners. So I think that, arguably, there's already a program in place. The superintendent is directed to make sure we keep it in place or keep a similar program, but you folks are already executing on the program. So I think you could change the word to may. You could keep the word shall. I feel like it works either way, and I don't know that a lot of people are, deciding where to live based on policy 6130 and their reading of it. But I think we're covered either way. But to the extent we need a motion here, I would move that this committee adopt the recommendation of, or recommend to the board that it adopt the press version of 6130 and replace the custom version we have currently.
Fraser, may okay, or what's your?
I agree. I think this covers, you all have talked so, I mean, you've given us so much data, you all obviously know what you're talking about, and this is very important and near and dear to your hearts, right? I think, this is the framework to allow them to do what they do in curriculum, right? They're where the rubber meets the road, and this is just the framework to allow them to do this. So I think adopting Press's policy to allow them to work within that makes sense to me, and I agree with the changing the may to shall, since you actually don't have to have this in place, but you want to have that flexibility.
All right, all those in favor of making a,
Change the word from may
Shall
to
to-
shall.
from shall to may? Yeah. All those in favor of making a recommendation to the board to replace existing policy 6130, program for the gifted, to program for the gifted press policy, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
I just had one more thing, Dan.
Yeah.
I would love, if you have ideas for how we can help to recruit those, like, we want to compete for those families too, right? And we want them to stay here. We want our best kids, our brightest kids. We think all of our kids come with genius every day, right? We want those families here. If there are ways that we can help tell our story, like I just calculated, like our kids earned over 3,400 college credits last year just through AP exams alone, right? Like that's incredible, right? So if there are ways that we can tell those stories, like our top kids can compete with any of the local schools, right? And if there are ways that we can tell those stories to better advocate for our district, like please share with us. I'm happy to, we just are putting something out today or tomorrow to help recruit kids for AP exams because we believe that, 79% of kids taking them or of tests taken were a 3 or above. Like if kids sign up, our teachers do a heck of a job getting them ready for the test, right? And
Teachers are great in AP.
they're so good, right? And so that's where we want to advocate and advertise that part because I don't know that there's many districts around that can compete with that level of success in those AP courses, right? And so if you've got ideas, I'm happy to listen and
Yeah, I mean, I can.
think how we can advertise together.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of it. You're hitting the nail on the head. A lot of it is the packaging and the advertising, as well. And yeah, and telling kids why it's important to take AP exams. You'll be placed in. You won't have to take the remedial class when you hit college. You'll get. Some schools give credit, some don't. But
Yeah, and I think I think I calculate using Parkland's tuition, it's over $600,000 we saved our kids based upon the number of credits they got last year from AP exams. Like, it's pretty cool to tell families like, hey, save
you
money,
can get done in 3 years.
get a
not
head
4.
start, right? Like,
You can start working towards your master's your 4th year.
yeah. So, yeah, we got some other things coming too, but I won't put that out yet.
And even if you don't get the credit, you still had experience in a college class. So naturally, you're going to do better when you attempt a college class because you've already had practice at it with no cost. So that's one of the huge advantages to taking an AP
Although I do
class.
think the dual credit classes might model more.
We are going to move forward. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate our guests coming to discuss this. Our next policy item on the agenda is 740, non-public school students, including parochial and homeschool students. So it's my understanding that this policy was brought to the committee to consider whether we should consider allowing homeschooled students that don't take courses at our high schools to be able to participate in extracurricular activities. Is that correct?
It was just to adopt the IHSA policy that allows for it, and I think there's requirements. Ours is stricter than the IHSA one. IHSA is like you have to have one class. Technically, you have to be enrolled, you have to be taking one class at the high school, like live, and then you can participate. I've got to, my computer for whatever reason won't turn on. But it's just, why don't we just stick with what IHSA says as far as a policy similar to press? Let's not, I don't think it's, if we have kids who, I wouldn't want to deter taxpayers from being able to move here, let their kids, there are a million reasons why somebody may choose some part of a homeschool curriculum for their student, from learning disabilities, behavior issue onward. But I think we should, if they comply with what IHSA says, then we should allow their children to play sports. And extracurriculars.
So Betsy, would you suggest taking the press policy under extracurricular activities, including interscholastic competition, and just subbing it into the existing policy we have?
Yes, yes. And just that part, and I think maybe put some language in there that says to comply, and I think it's maybe in there already.
It's already in there.
To comply with IHSA.
Yep.
Because they're the main governing, but ours, yeah.
Any discussion on this?
Did we talk with Orlando? What's his thought?
Generally speaking, we look back, and this has been a longstanding practice, policy here in the district. And I guess to summarize, it was because the reason the policy is the way it is there was this general understanding that, if Unit 4 offers a lot of opportunities for students, academically, extracurricularly. And the consensus was, when this policy was adopted, that those benefits should be available to the students that enroll full-time in the district. And so they hadn't been offered to homeschool students generally.
Correct.
And so that's generally been the consensus, at least 20 years, I would say that this probably closer to 25 or more. I think I went back, and what did we find, like 2002, in some old policies where we found record of this. So it's been a long-standing practice. Depending on the district, you'll see different policy adoptions on this. Some allow it to happen more regularly, and some kind of take a hard stance that, you need to be enrolled. There are, I would say, some logistic pieces. The IHSA requires that to be eligible, you're passing 25 hours, which is basically 5 classes with a passing grade. And so how to monitor that of a homeschool student from an eligibility perspective, I think would be something that we would have to talk about and figure out. But I think that's kind of the history on why the policy is written the way it is.
And the reason I brought it forward is there was a student that slipped through the cracks who was homeschooled but for one class and was playing on his team and allowed to play all 4 years, and then their brother tried to do the same thing, was told they can't do it. I don't know how one person was able to do it or not do it, but I think generally you're going to see your kids in here who are doing this are the ones, for whatever reason, they're taking a different curriculum than what's offered at our schools. And it would even be a kid that's, passed out of gone through a lot of our classes and wants to take, a lot of classes at, Parkland or their senior year, or U of I or something like that, and might not hit our 6 classes or how many that are required. And it would give them that opportunity to still play on sports teams. I don't foresee the, knock on wood, eligibility thing being the biggest hurdle here. I think you might have people saying, why is this homeschool person allowed to play? I think it will, and take my kid's spot. But you might have parents complaining about that. But if you're paying, again, back to if you're a taxpayer, and it could only serve to help our sports teams.
I do think you're going to run into the eligibility conversation, you are holding district students to a higher regard than a homeschool student who is not in the same curriculum. And I think, those of us around the table here know that you can be homeschooled in many different ways.
Yeah.
So you are, I appreciate what you're sharing, Betsy, but you're sharing an entity that is rigorous homeschooling, and then there is a large entity that is not rigorous homeschooling. And then if you tell, Mike's child that they are enrolled in the district and you are failing 2 classes and you are ineligible, and then you have a homeschooled student who is not in any sort of a rigorous curriculum, nobody is looking at reporting on this because there is none, that they can play and do what they want however
be pressure to push people in.
Exactly.
So
I think you do get a little sticky there.
So the language in this paragraph, though, does require that the student have at least a half-day of regular school. So these aren't going to be students that are going to be pure 100% homeschool. They have to have some nexus into the school, and the only way we would allow them into our classes is if we did have some instructional history, educational history behind them, to be able to do it. So that's where there's a
So-
kind of safety.
Proposal is to move to IHSA's wording that says you only have to take one class.
No, it's to take the press policy.
Press
It's
policy, there
it's
must-
to take the press policy and put it into where we've got this paragraph, which is a non-public student is eligible to participate in interscholastic competition, provided his or her participation adheres to the regulations established by any association in which the district maintains a membership, and 2, non-athletic extracurricular activities, provided the student attends the district school for at least one half of the regular school day, excluding lunch. A non-public student who participates in extracurricular activities is subject to all policies, regulations, and rules that are applicable to other participants in the activity.
No, I don't think we have that, but I think you can, I've seen some of the places the "and" part is taken out.
Yeah, so that, I think that applies to, they're eligible to participate in interscholastic competitions of the sports or the non-athletic. And it looks like the half-day, am I reading that? It looks like the half-day part where they have, excluding lunch, is for those non-athletic extracurriculars.
It's the comma "and" too, the way the press policy is written, that
Yeah.
makes me think it's,
Are sports
PD connect.
interscholastic competition?
Yeah.
Or is that like Quiz Bowl?
Well,
Would be
they-
like Scholastic Bowl.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think Quiz Bowl's a thing.
I just,
Suzanne.
I just want to ask a clarifying question. So does this, are we talking, we keep saying homeschool, but this, does this include parochial schools?
Yes.
So no one's saying parochial, that's what it says, if you read it.
It's included in there.
non-public school.
So a non-public private school, an NPPS, is parochial and homeschooled. So this means, and I also want to remind you all that these are also families, most of the time with homebound, that are entitled to non-public private school proportionate share funds through IDEA. And so then we get into, are they coming to school and do they still get their funds? Or do I say they have to come and get sped? Like, this is maybe a little bit more than just simple homebound people coming to play on a sports team. I'm just wanting you all to recognize that. That's what I was
I'll also share this
parochial school.
from Orlando. He did send me an email on this. The following schools in the Big 12 Conference also do not allow homeschooled students to participate unless they take classes in person. Those are Urbana, Normal, so you got 2 high schools there, Unit 5, and then Bloomington School District 87. He also indicates that he spoke to the ADs regarding this policy, and they have tremendous concerns regarding the message it sends to our student body and issues related to equity and recruiting.
So there's 3 of the Big 12, so now we've got we got 10 or, I don't know how many are still left in the Big 12. But the other ones presumably do allow for it.
4, because Normal's got 2 schools.
Is it both normal? So
Yeah.
Community and West, okay. So then we have like 8. And I think
Yeah.
can you not limit who would, I mean, if you're going to St. Thomas More or Judah Christian, obviously, I mean, that's a bricks and mortar school. I think you could limit it to say any schools out with a physical presence within the, obviously within. the district.
Academy High, it's Montessori's, it's.
Right, and I would say that those, I mean, if there's a physical bricks and mortar school that you're attending versus something online, homeschool.
That might require a different policy then.
Right,
Would-
I think
that-
this, we would have to, I mean, the language needs to be,
Would that be discriminatory? If you pick certain parochial,
I would just say if you have a A school that is in the district, like bricks and mortar school, you wouldn't have the ability to play on a team. I mean, in theory, you'd play for your own school's team.
If we're talking about
Because the other
parochial or
schools have
any other school
IHSA.
that's recognized by the IHSA,
Yeah, there you go.
it would include a multiplier to our enrollment. So if we allowed that to happen, we just would have to also be aware that it's a co-op, and so it's going to be treated like a co-op. And so when you do that,
You're gonna
you
compete in
add
the
the
suburbs.
enrollment of all of the school.
So we're up to Chicago
yours.
at Centennial.
Yeah, even if you get one kid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just,
Because you have to include the whole enrollment of the school into yours.
You know, life is not always fair, and there are probably plenty of wonderful things about being homeschooled, and there are probably some tough things about being homeschooled. But, you know, I feel like so many things, it's a decision for the parents to make about their children. You know, when you decide to homeschool homeschool your child, you probably do it for very good reasons. They're very personal to you and your family. And not being able to play on the sports team at the local high school may be a consideration one must make. So I'm probably a no on this. I think that Dan raises a very good point about, well, now we got to count every student at all of these schools into our attendance, into our census, and now we're competing. Now maybe we're competing against different schools now. That seems like the tail wagging the dog to me.
Wait, so explain that again, Dan. You
so
wouldn't,
there are a number of schools that, you know, don't have enough athletes to field a team. And so they work in collaboration with other districts to create co-ops. And there are certain rules that conferences set on co-ops, so this would also have to be a conference thing. And then there's certainly rules that the IHSA sets. And one of the big ones is that when you have a co-op, you assume the enrollment of the other school. And so if we took, it wouldn't matter what it is. If we took, I don't know what Judah is, or I don't know what St. Thomas More is, but let's say they decided to drop wrestling and we wanted to allow them to co-op and be part of Champaign schools, Central or Centennial. We would add all of the enrollment from that school to ours. The IHSA would then reclassify us.
right, this is different than co-oping, though. Like, I mean, because I actually looked about co-oping. Our Big 12s will cut us if we co-op a team. So that's, I mean, I don't think you can co-op.
Well, if we're talking about adding any other parochial school,
But why do you have to add parochial? Why can't it just be home school?
the homeschool wouldn't have a multiplier, it would just be one, unless there was
Yeah.
two siblings, and it would be two. I think the question there becomes whether that's a practice that we want to adopt in the district.
I think co-oping in any other school, that's going down a slippery, slippery slope. I'm thinking homeschooled kids who, for whatever reason, are not fitting, their parents are paying taxes, presumably, they're paying in to our district, and they're going to fulfill take one class, a PE class, or some class at our schools, and that they would be able to, I mean, we're probably talking 2 kids a year.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I'm cautious about is when you think about interscholastic sports, there's a sense of community and pride that comes along with competing as a Maroon, as a Charger. If you open the door to allowing students to participate that aren't part of that, I think it has the potential to feel different. I would say now more than ever, there are opportunities to compete in sports through club programs, more than ever existed. In fact, if you look at some of the most elite athletes in the country, many of them forego their high school seasons and train exclusively through club participation at elite and national competitions. And so if this was kind of like the only dance, then I could see maybe having greater consideration for the students. But I think opportunities exist. I don't care what it is, in what sport. You can compete at a variety of levels, as a more of a rec level or at a very high and elite level if you're that good, almost all year round. And so I guess my feeling is, I believe that, our interscholastic sports should be really reserved for the students that are enrolled as students here in Unit 4. And I think it's in line with what our ADs are telling us as well. That's just my opinion. I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't know if Orlando heard back from Peoria, but Peoria has several of the schools in the Big 12, 4 of them, I think. And so there are 11 schools in the Big 12, and we have 2 of them. Right, Normal has 2 of them, Urbana, so that's 5. So if we
And
hear back from Bloomington, I don't know if he heard back from Bloomington. I don't know if he heard back from Peoria, that Bloomington's 1, Peoria's 4. Danville would be the only other one. So I just don't know if he only gave us the ones he heard back from, or if that matters, but I agree with everything you're saying, Dan.
I had Sherry do some research for us on this when the question came up initially. And I think the only area school that we found was Gibson City. And I can see how rural districts consider that, right? They're just sometimes, they're shrinking like a lot of smaller districts in the state. And so, being able to allow, more students to participate maybe is the difference between them having a team and not having to co-op with someone else. I don't think that's the situation we find ourselves in Champaign.
No, we don't need a co-op. And it would kick us out of the Big 12.
Well, and it's not just sports. I mean, it's not just athletics, correct? I mean, this policy would be everything, like you said, from Scholastic Bowl to speech competition, correct?
No, it's just athletics. I think you're
No,
allowed to do,
Well, it says extracurricular activities and interscholastic competition.
IHSA governs
Yeah,
It's way
the
bigger than-
interscholastic too.
yeah,
Yeah, so.
marching band.
Yes.
I
So
mean,
does
you know,
IESA
allow
at
homeschool
the
kids
middle
to come into
level.
clubs.
Cheer.
Yep.
Like, then you've got school clubs.
Correct.
And student Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's a lot, folks. We have a lot of opportunities for our kids.
Well, I think in the interest of time tonight, we move
all
on
right,
to the
done.
next
Move on. Move on to the next one.
Okay.
It's not passing.
All right.
No action.
No action. It's not coming forward to the board.
All right, the next one is 880, gifts to the district. 880. Find this one. Here it is. Sherry, remind me again why this one was on here? Betsy, did you, had you requested this one on here?
I think this,
Did we mess up gifted with gifts for the gift district?
I don't think so. I think this came up because there was a very brief conversation over Title IX. Title IX requirements are being in compliance with Title IX with respect to donations from boosters. Boosters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boosters question. That's the question.
And that's 890 is the
This does govern gifts and basically says any gift becomes, it has to be used and be in compliance with, right, Title IX and our 7:10 for equal education opportunities. And basically, once this goes to the district is responsible for distributing it equitably in a way that doesn't result in disparate treatment for boys or girls teams.
So if I want to give 20,000, if I'm a member of the community and give $50,000 to the football team, that's going to obviously impact this. So then do you tell that person, I'm sorry, you can't give a gift of 50,000, or do we make it equitable in another way? Because some people would be like, I don't want 50,000 going into a giant pool. I'm not going to give anything. I want to put it into.
So we had an example, I believe it was last year or the year before, with the She Shed, the baseball team. You know, they bought a trailer or a shed for them to practice, and they started building it. No, it didn't. It was for the boys, and we had to say, hold on, it needs to be board approved, and if so, the girls need to have access. Softball. And it caused a big problem, and I don't know where we are with that. Do we still have
$1
it?
million on a
There was,
softball field?
no, there were,
So,
that's a rabbit hole,
$1
but
million on a
there were
million.
a number of issues from just being not code compliant in
I mean,
any
they started literally
capacity.
building it.
And,
Their electricity coming in.
you know, it was, the donation was made without the knowledge of, you know, anybody.
Anybody.
Right? And so it was, you know, found by our director of maintenance on a random Saturday when he saw a group trenching through the ground to try to, you know, connect electricity to it, and was able to put a stop to it. So I guess my question is where does this policy need to be adjusted?
This is the right policy. The question was, like, how are we, when somebody gives donations, when money goes in, when booster clubs raise money or don't raise money, how do we ensure that, well, I mean, right now, I don't know that federally Title IX even necessarily exists, but if when these complaints, you know, when we can start bringing them in, how's it going to impact that? Does everyone have to, what legally?
Procedure, so it starts at the procedure piece, right? So the first part of the procedure is it goes to the board. Anything over 5,000 goes right to the board in order to be accepted. So by the time it's coming to the board, we have had a conversation about what is actually happening with this donation, what are the parameters around the donation, what are we gonna do? There's a whole process that we start walking through in terms of just what is happening with this before the board can accept it. So all of that gets spelled out to you in the board bar to accept it. If it's a sports piece where we may have a Title IX concern, that's when we start coming back on the other side and saying, okay, so if we do this here, we're gonna have to make sure we've got some resources over here to help counterbalance it. And it's either resources that we have, or we talk to the donor to say, would you care? And this is what happened with the She Shed. We ultimately sat down with both the girls softball team and the boys baseball team and said, this is gonna have to be a shared process, and you're gonna have to both occupy this, whether we like it or not. And the baseball team was a little bit like, elbows out, we don't wanna do it. The girls softball team was like, what? We have no idea what you're talking about. And so we had to kind of bring some folks together. But it's what helps then say, okay, well, if the issue is boys are changing outside in the porta potty or literally out in the field because they don't feel like they've got a place to go change, we have a different conversation we have to have. We need changing spaces that are equitable between boys sports and girls sports. A totally different conversation. So behind the scenes, administration is working to try to make sure there's balance, and that comes to the board then at the point in time that we're taking the donation. So you guys would ultimately, as board, have the ability to say, did you think this out? What's gonna happen here? I got concerns about it. And remember, if you recall, the approval for the She Shed did take some time to get to the board because there were concerns and there were questions that were being raised about what was going to happen with this and how does it fit with Title IX. And so we didn't accept it for a very long period of time before. And when we don't accept it, we have the ability to just call somebody and haul it off our property, right? And that's really, at the end of the day, what we told the baseball team. If we don't accept this, if you don't accept what we're trying to do, we're just simply going to move it to the street and you're going to have to deal with it there, because it's on our property and you can't keep it. So we have some triggers and some ways that we can help manage the process, but ultimately this is a board approval process at that level.
But, okay, so that, I understand that's an over $5,000, but what about when you have a sports team that has, say, a golf fundraiser and brings in $20,000, $25,000, for example? versus another sports team that can't even scrap together $100 on their GoFundMe fundraiser, which I have seen the little
So
bit of-
again, different policies then start coming into play. This is a policy about donations that are specifically directed back to the district. Booster clubs.
Okay, the boosters, my question, yeah.
Boosters, which is the other policy I think you were
That's
also
the one I
referencing
wanna-
in there. That does require, that probably actually does require some more conversation. I think
Yeah,
there's
that's what I wanted to
conversation
have
that has to
conversation.
happen about how best we deal with boosters, because you are always going to have certain boosters that are just capable of fundraising out the wazoo. Football boosters, massive. There's a couple of other band boosters, another group. Absolutely fundraises like crazy. Boys baseball boosters doing a phenomenal job. So what Orlando and I did is we sat with the boys baseball booster, the girls softball boosters, and said, hey, boys, you got to teach the girls how to fundraise at the level you're fundraising. What can we do to help facilitate that? Do we share lists? Do we share strategies? Like, can you walk us through the process so that we can really help the girls softball team get to the same level? Because that's the ideal is you get everybody at that same level of being able to generate at the booster level. But that technically is not the work of the district. The work of the district is the donation piece. It is not what happens at the boosters. And we are very careful to keep a very, very bright line between the district and the boosters.
Well, look at number 7 on there. I think it,
It mirrors the language that's in your gifts too, right? Like, it can't be earmarked for a specific purpose. They can make recommendations, but it's for the district to use at their discretion. So in my view, that conversation, right, is still happening. Like, do you understand? Oh, shoot.
Sorry about that. Usually I don't have any complaints about my voice carrying. Do you have any concerns about the fact that we're going to be taking this and we're going to be distributing it equitably? And you're having those conversations about, these are we've gotten this bump in cash. These are the resources that we have in order to make sure that our other teams are equitably funded. And that equitable, that funding kind of, it's not just maybe as to one school, right? But it's something that we're looking at district-wide.
But this is boosters, does this mean the boosters have to give their money to the district and then have it dispersed that way?
No, boosters are different than donations.
Booster clubs may make recommendations, but cash or other valuable consideration must be given to the district to use at its discretion.
If they make a donation.
What if they buy, so they can,
So,
but it is like, so you're a booster, you're raising money. I mean, the sports teams, my kids have been on, all right, you're selling donuts. Swim team would sell donuts. You're getting this money in and we're going to use it to subsidize buying team suits. Or if we need something for the pool or something like that, a new starting system, something like that, then the boosters pay for that.
correct. And it never intersects to the district's financials. Like, I have
That's
no
still-
visual, I have
right.
no visual of what happens with boosters.
So if I'm a booster, so then I think the guidance needs to be given to the boosters to say, everyone needs their own EIN number and their own.
They do.
If that's what's supposed to happen.
100%. They
They're
should not be
501c3,
using the
right?
district's EIN.
Yeah, they're 501c3.
Yeah, so they all should have their own EIN number, but what happens when you have, goes back to when the football boosters are bringing in tens of thousands and they're, renting charter buses and sending their kids to camps, things like that, like or
So,
how does that?
so
play into-
they shouldn't rent charter buses. That should go through the district. And
shouldn't have happened.
Right, that shouldn't have happened. So it's those issues that create problems like Title IX. So if, that we have to be careful. And it's just a matter of if it's been monitored. I mean, some stuff has been allowed, but they can raise as much money as they want. But when they start buying like uniforms and things like that for the boys' sports and then the girls, the district has to make a decision. We can accept this, but now we have to cover the rest. So you put yourself in a situation, so you have to take all into consideration.
How are we, that's, I guess my question might be not this policy, but like, how are we monitoring and how are we communicating that to the heads of the boosters? Because I think that is where we could.
So Orlando meets, I think, twice a year at the beginning of each semester with the coaches and the boosters. And the athletic director, the athletic directors, the coaches, and boosters. And then the athletic directors meet with the boosters throughout the course of the year. Where we see it is, and we can't always catch it because we don't handle we don't handle their money. They're not in our bank account. They don't use our tax ID number. In fact, we had a couple of instances, some of you guys remember, where the archery club had somehow managed to get the district's tax ID number and opened up their booster bank account, and we had to shut it down and get them started on their own thing. And the only reason we found out about it is because the IRS actually sent us a request for some additional information on the interest income on the bank account. We were like, what bank account? And so, you know, sometimes we find out about it that way. But operating procedure is boosters are totally separate from the district. Where it becomes a district, where the district nexus occurs, is when the boosters decide to make a donation of something. So if the donation becomes the playground, I'm going to use the Barksdale playground because that was the classic, which actually is what created the policy to the extent
Barksdale
that it
or
is.
Bottenfield?
Bottenfield, I'm sorry. So Bottenfield PTA raises some crazy amount of money, much to the annoyance of all the other principals, and decide that they're going to build this very fancy playground. And so the district had to accept the donation, which now makes it our property. So we said to the boosters, give us the money, that's awesome. We will put a little plaque by it if that's what we choose to do. But at the end of the day, it's ours. We use our staff, our labor, because we also have labor agreements. I have unionized staff I have to worry about. We have any number of 1,000 things that could go wrong. So that's why we have a process for district donations and why it has to go to the board, so that the board has eyeballs on donations that are coming in, that are coming through an outside organization. Now, the sports booster gets a little bit tricky, and that is definitely something, as you were talking about, I was thinking we could probably work through an additional procedure layer, which would say over 5,000 also has to come to the board if it's a booster purchase that in effect is a donation for a team. So I am a team that is getting, you know, $4,000 worth of uniforms. The board should somehow have awareness that the boosters have bought a fourth set of football uniforms for the football team, because that allows us on the other side to say to the athletic directors, all right, you're not going to buy a new uniform refresh for football because you just got the fourth set from your boosters. Why don't we use this money when we budget in the next upcoming fiscal year, and let's spread the wealth into some other teams that maybe haven't had a refresh over some period of time. So we've got some levers we can pull to help make that a little bit fair, but that's probably a procedural piece I think we could talk through. All athletic fees are outside of whatever the boosters are doing, but the uniforms definitely cost different amounts of money. Yes. Yeah, cross-country uniforms are almost negligible from an expenditure standpoint. Cheerleading uniforms and dance uniforms are starting to get up there. Baseball uniforms get up there. And sometimes the boosters want to do the little razzle-dazzle-y things on the uniforms, so they're like, hey, we want to pay for this. So I think we can work through a procedure that would get that information back to you guys, so you have some better insight into it.
I agree. This is procedure and communication,
Yeah.
generally with the boosters. Next item is, thanks for hanging in there, everyone. Is it 280? board member oath and conduct. The next one.
I think I brought this one to the committee. Dan, you ready for me to go on this?
Yep, go ahead.
And we got 13 minutes till 8 o'clock, so I hope to get to all three of these. That's not a joke.
It's gonna do it.
No, you've got this.
Okay. In the Illinois School Code, this section 280 is reflective of the language in the school code, which requires this entire oath to be read, which we did here a few months ago, in order for a newly elected board member to take their seat in the school board. But it's also where let me back up. There was much confusion in the most recent election about when the newly elected people would take over from the old board. And it just hasn't been clear. It's not clear in the school code. It's not clear in the policies. The school code says that new members shall take the oath of office within 40 days of the election. This year, it was April 1st was the election, so 40 days later was like May 10 or May 9. But it doesn't specify an exact date or time like the U.S. Constitution does. At the same time, there's some uncertainty about when the election official, Aaron Ammons, was going to certify the election. And then there's some interplay between the date of certification and things that must happen after that. But it came down to a window for us this most recent spring of some number of days. It was like 2 weeks, a window where we could possibly take the oath of office. And there wasn't a lot of clarity coming from the leadership of the last board about when that was going to happen. And so you had these newly elected people, with families and lives and not a lot of communication about when we should be at the Mellon Building to raise our right hand and, or do we do that on our own or, so I'm hoping to cure that problem going forward. Because this policy 280 has this paragraph at the bottom that says the board president will administer the oath in an open board meeting, I thought this is the best place to correct the language and make it more clear. So I suggest that we continue to make sure that this is done publicly, but that we remove any chance for if somebody wants to hold on to the reins of power or push through some policy or something as a new board is on the verge of coming into office, I'd like to reduce the chance of any shenanigans happening. So once this other duly elected official at the county level, the county clerk, certifies the election, what I'm trying to get at with this is there can be no other meeting of the old board. By operation of this policy, once the election authority certifies the election, any future meeting of the Unit 4 School Board is the new board. So if the county clerk certifies on the 21st day and we must take our oath by the 40th day, I don't want there to be some emergency or special school board meeting on the 24th day to try to push through a bunch of stuff that the old board never got to or needs to get through before they leave office. And I just think that we need to have a clean, identifiable time for the new people to take over. And if we say, well, it's the first meeting in May, well, that can pose a problem depending on when the consolidated election is, and maybe for whatever reason, the first meeting in May gets canceled, and now there wasn't a second meeting in May, and now we're into June, and what do we do now? When you say it's just the next board meeting after the certification, that's it. That whenever the school board reconvenes, it's the new people. Your job is done here. It's the new people. So this is my proposed language, striking 3 words, adding a few more. So I would propose that change.
Do we want to have next open board meeting? Because this isn't an open.
I would.
We went through a lot of these policies as background, Tony and I did, just to try to prevent what happened the last term.
So what if you said regularly scheduled?
Well, I think
Well, because you don't want someone coming in and having like 5 special board meetings beforehand. The idea is when that election has been publicly or certified, that no more business can be done by the old board. The next thing that happens is the swearing in of the new board.
That was what created so much consternation was there was no authority. When do the new people take over? And but the only obligation in the school code is that the new people, when I'm saying new people, I mean people who have just won an election. This says they shall take their oath within 40 days of the election. It is not, if you read the entirety of the school code, all of our policies, it remains unclear who can administer that if it's not at an open board meeting. What if there isn't an open board meeting within 40 days for whatever reason? We had some unique problems going on at the last time around, and what if there isn't a board? Then does the old board stay on because they didn't meet that? I mean, it's just, what I was trying to do is create a rule that cannot be disturbed, cannot be overcome by some clever shenanigans. Once the election is certified by a different elected official, then that's it. There can never be another school board meeting of the old board again. Can't be.
So get your business done before the election is certified.
thinking. So the vote is taken, and let's say it takes 38 days.
21 is
Can't-
max.
it
It can only
can't.
take 21.
21, I'm sorry. Let's say it takes. but
There's a
in the
19-day
intervening-
buffer.
Yes, but
Yeah.
in those intervening days, you're not suggesting that the old board can't do business. You're just saying by that day, they've got to be out and.
On the 22nd day.
Right.
Once it's certified, well,
Once it's
is it the
certified.
22nd, or is it, because sometimes this one was certified on the, like, 7th day? Is it?
No, what I'm saying is, they can't take it, the old board, whoever the school board members are, the day before the election official declares the winners, they can take whatever action they want. But the moment in time he declares who the new winners of the winners of the election are, then no action of the school board can take place before all those people are sworn in. They can do it the next day. They can have an emergency school board meeting, but it's the new people who are deciding what happens, not the old board.
I think we should also put in here something about age.
And remember that the school code also requires that all of the regularly scheduled school board meetings are decided on the first night that the new board is assembled. So in theory, if we're following the rules here, the first night of the last term, we knew the date. We know the date of the first meeting. Like, once Aaron Ammons or whoever it is certifies, we all immediately know what's the next regularly scheduled meeting. Now, the old board could schedule an intervening, they could schedule a meeting to occur after the certification, but they're not going to be the ones making the decisions at that meeting. They could schedule it for the purpose of swearing everybody in, but they can't schedule it for the purpose of conducting any other business.
Okay. I'm fine with the board member, the changes to the board member oath. But I think that really we're talking about 2:210, right?
Well, right now, I'm just talking about 280.
Okay.
I only modified
It's the
two.
paragraph
I know,
I
but
modified 2:210 because there's an interplay there.
Right,
Okay,
I-
so if you want to jump to that,
I think that it,
yeah. So if you want to jump to that, 2:210 has this preamble language at the top that just rehashes when the election takes place, which I don't think that needs to be part of 210. But it's describing a scenario where this is all contemplating that you have a board who is acting in good faith, and they're trying to help the next board with a smooth transition. And, I think some outside observers would say that that's not what we encountered a few months ago, and I'm trying to correct that. So I'm just trying to take the ambiguity out of it. So I have added the language, the first meeting of the Board of Education following the election authority certification of the April consolidated election shall be its organization. We identify it in the policy. Instead of leaving it to one board to pick what's going to be the organizational meeting, who picks that? Identify it in the policy. Make it known now, forevermore. It's always the first meeting after the election is certified. That's always the organizational meeting. And at that meeting, these 4 things take place.
So get your special meetings in if you want to change something before the election's certified, but
Just don't leave it to the old board to decide. Because this stuff is all political stuff. People have differing opinions. Sometimes it's hotly contested. Take the emotion out of it. Take the political, there's more colorful words to use here, which I shall not use. But take all that out and just make it known right now, and operate accordingly. We know the date of the.
Yep. Your power ends X date. Or
We
your
know
relieved
the
of your
outside
responsibility.
date. The election before you guys, they literally took the full time to do the canvassing and the certification of the votes. So he went really fast this time, presumably because technology's improved the certification process and the ballot counting process, but you're never, the date fix on the 40 days is really the date fix across the state to help everybody from an election standpoint. So your language that you've proposed in 2210 we need to harmonize it with 280, because essentially you're leaving that no more than 40 days in there, which may or may not be needed, right? This language just has to, we just have to.
Well, I'd be happy,
This way.
I would accept the friendly amendment to remove the which shall occur no more than 40 days after the consolidated election, but that matches the code.
Right.
But I see what you're saying, so if you blow that deadline, then what happens? Which is the exact thought process I went through by removing all the stuff in red where you could blow past the date. If you said the new board will always get sworn in on May 1st, or the first meeting in May or whatever, when you blow past that, then what happens? Whereas here, it's clear as day. It's the next meeting after the certification.
Why don't we just say that in 280 that the board president or the vice whatever the case may be, depending on who rolled off or what the election results are, right? They're rules for whoever in the line of succession. Anyway, what if we just say that the board president will publicly administer the oath at the at the organizational meeting following the April, at the organizational meeting as set forth in 2210.
Because that'll still open it up for times of, if you make it the organizational, then what's the organizational? Then we're gonna set the organizational meeting at a different, that was a problem last time. We didn't set there was ambiguity. There was nothing that said when the organizational meeting had to be set.
I'm fine, I'm actually fine with that if then you define, if you use 210 to define that the organizational meeting is the first meeting that occurs following the election certification.
Because that's what I think you did.
Yeah.
Right? So does that make it more clear? I mean, I don't want necessarily people jumping around to different policies, but if you're setting in 2210, like the organizational meeting is the meeting that occurs within 40 days after the election results, right? No more than 40 days.
Yeah.
After the election results, then we just kind of cross-reference.
Yeah,
Do
no,
you want to do the board president will publicly administer the oath at the next board meeting, which will serve as the organizational meeting? I'm at 280.
You still want to make sure to address the situation at hand that it's immediately following the certification of the election results.
After the election already has declared the winner.
Which theoretically could occur no less than 40 days, but as we just saw, occurred 7 days. So that would have put that would have put you guys being seated sort of mid-ish April, mid-endish April, as opposed to a week into May, the 10 days into May. Now, one of the things too, from a board sort of organizational standpoint, when we get to those years where we have the consolidated, before you guys finalize the board calendar in July, you should probably take a look at the election calendar and then sort of make sure you're sort of bootstrapping all of this by publicly acknowledging there will be a regularly scheduled board meeting, and you can label it the organizational meeting,
Yeah.
because you know that would be the meeting.
That's a great idea.
That would be 100% after.
That's a good idea.
certification.
I think that's a great idea.
So we're going to rework the language and then.
Yeah, so
Bring it
Fraser, what
forward.
do you think we need to change?
Well,
We could add to 280 that is the organizational meeting. Or we could remove the within 40 days from 210.
I like the 40 days into 210. I think that addresses your issue. You actually brought up the question that I had, which was, aren't we setting the board calendar in advance so we kind of have an idea of when that's going to be? I'm fine with 280 referencing the organizational meeting. And then 2210 is saying, this is when that organizational meeting is going to be, folks.
Yeah.
And then it already cross-references, right, 2210. And then I think that does away with any ambiguity.
So in 280,
Yep.
before the semicolon, comma, which shall be the organizational meeting? Or, okay. We'll just add that.
It could even be at the board meeting, at the organizational board meeting after the election authority has, certified the vote.
Well, I want to be careful that somebody doesn't call a meeting an organizational meeting or refuse to call them. We're not playing name games here.
Yes.
It has to be just the next board meeting of any
I was like,
variety.
Tony, if it works the way this is done, I think we played out through the scenario of last go-around. I think, and Tony's read the code, and if we could make this work, this leaves up to zero ambiguity, because last go-around, we had people changing organizational, it was special meetings.
Draft something and.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to take a lot of
Because I was just saying,
And
because you
then
change
you
the
put it
calendar,
on.
do you have a quorum, and what if
I
you
would double
don't,
check
and-
too with election and
going
just
to.
see, yeah.
I guess
with
the-
election.
Can't a sitting, what would prevent a sitting board when they are determining meetings to push that meeting out?
That's fine, you can't have any meetings prior to that, though. Like, if you say the next board meeting, whether it's special, whatever, that means the second that election is certified the way it's written, or Tony had written, is that meeting, or the election certified, and the next convening of the board is when you have to swear in.
Now, caused me to think about a scenario where a majority of the board is up for reelection, loses, intentionally pushed the first meeting after certification into, like, say, May, let's say after the 4th. How do the newly elected people be given the opportunity to take the oath if the old board is working with bad motives or whatever? I guess that does cover the board president, if the board president is unavailable, the vice president, and if not, the longest serving. So and in our policy, it says 2 or more board members can call a special meeting. And it also says 3 or more. The code says that. It's internally inconsistent. But you could have 2 people who say, we want a special board meeting to swear in these new 5 other people, and they could get that done.
That was the question the last go-around, was, do you need a quorum to swear somebody in? Can they be sworn in outside of a board meeting? And, like, if you have if you don't have a quorum show up, which was what we were 3-3, then then are people going to actually be sworn? Can just 3 people swear? Because 3 people can call a special meeting. Can you call a special meeting and then somebody swear? Does the meeting have to be opened, I guess, for the oath to be administered?
So.
You certainly do.
But
Well,
the oath is not a
so
vote.
but not the oath. There is within press, and I think we need to look a little more closely at how the mechanics would work. The board president may designate a local official, such as a judge, to administer the oath at an open board meeting. So.
Is that where you're reading that, Linda?
It's a
in
footnote
press.
3 to the press policy on this.
So what I'm wondering is, maybe you just make it a de facto procedure that the board president will identify a local official, including a judge, or such as a judge.
What if
each
the
year as a
elected
part of their
It does have to
organizational
be
meeting.
it does have to be an open, though.
Say again?
It does need to be an open, at an open board
And you
meeting.
can't get to an open unless you got 4 people in the room, right?
Correct,
Present for a quorum.
correct.
But if the president doesn't want to appoint a judge, I would take that president language out. I would just say,
Well,
a
just
local judge may.
the fact of the matter is,
swear
no
in.
business, even if you had bad motives, if you had bad motives or you know, if you wanted to conduct business, you simply cannot.
Right.
Because the policy says that you're no longer, it's not you anymore.
So you're never going to get away from lame duck board decisions. That happens uniformly every day, every year.
Sure.
Across the state. So the power is for the board to undo the lame duck decision. And so you do have, unless it is,
You're allowed to make lame duck decisions. That's part of government. I mean, that's fine.
But
But
what
there has
you're-
to be a point in time where we know that the new people are taking over.
correct.
And so make all the lame duck decisions you want. That's your, I mean, lame duck just means you're at the end of your term, but that's your term. You have every right to make those decisions.
When that
but-
election's certified, it's not your term anymore.
But yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is once it's certified, you've lost the reins of power.
So then that's what we have to be clear on.
And the lame duck in this, you can and you can't undo it, because you sort of, you know how long it takes to undo
Yeah.
stuff, but it's also like, what if we're talking about spending and authorizing building of something? I mean, I can.
If the election is certified. If the election is certified and you have new board members, could they theoretically take C if they're being refused to take the oath to conduct a meeting, and then the people who are on the old board go through this process, swear them in? Do they have to be sworn in to,
They can also just sit there and read the oath.
right, that's
No
what
one
I'm saying.
has to, they could just show up and read the oath at the next organizational meeting per your language, which says it happens now. Yes.
Because once they're
That is an option.
certified, they are the board members, right?
Once they're certified, they're the board members.
And you're saying they could do that like in the parking lot or in their living
No,
room?
they have to be at the
In an
meeting, but like
Right.
if you didn't want.
And I think, but
if
Henry's
you-
saying it, what if there is no meeting, right? Is that what you're saying?
But so
What-
are
what-
you the board member then? Are you part of the quorum before the oath is administered, I guess?
Well,
What if
don't
they
you wanna,
announce
like,
we're
have-
canceling the meeting that's happening between the 21st and the 40th day? Let's say we have a meeting scheduled.
Okay.
For the 30th day.
Okay.
And the outgoing school board member says, and the last thing I'd like to do here is, we're canceling the meeting that's happening in that 19-day period. And we're canceling the only regularly scheduled meeting we have between the certification and the 40-day deadline. Canceled. Don't come to the Mellon Building, it's canceled. All right, good night, everybody. And then they walk out. And then they don't come back until the 45th day, or they never come back. To his point, how do the new people take the oath if the outgoing board is blowing the place up and saying, we have no, we're trying to talk in extremes here.
Laughing because we were
No,
asked.
but I'm, and I'm not,
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is how many we have? If we had 3-4 board members being sworn or elected officially, and it was certified, what I'm saying is those 3 plus the remaining 4 could go ahead and call a board meeting. So if they cancel it, you only have to post 48 hours. And
Right.
to schedule it.
So long as you have some that stay on, that have
So long as
already
you have-
taken the oath.
So long as you have 4, though.
Yeah,
but if you have
it's always 3, 4. I mean, you're
last
gonna,
time
you
it
know.
was 3.
Well, hey, Frazier, so in his scenario, if you have 3 people, the 3 of them decide we're gonna have a special board meeting to swear in these new 4 colleagues. Can those 3 people open a meeting if their first act is providing the oath to the others?
It would be the total of 7.
Yeah, but
Because
it's 3 to open the meeting, which is not a
Or
quorum.
unoathed.
But that's where you get a judge. You could have 3, get the judge to read, to start the meeting, open, and then administer the oath.
I don't-
This is, we're getting into really nitty.
Yeah.
This is what happened. We spent so much money arguing this point last go-around.
I also think they could, and forgive me, this is, my own kind of ignorance over your process, and I know that things were,
Messy.
yes, that's a very tactful way of putting it. But do you all typically have the organizational meeting where everyone shows up, it's the old board, and then you adjourn, what is it, sign die? Yeah, sign die. And then you come back, and then you swear in everybody new, and then you're off to the races?
Yeah.
Okay, that is how it's done. But last time that
Yeah,
didn't.
people should bring their families and their kids and everything. and
Right.
it's genial.
Last time an organizational meeting hadn't been set, and so there was an attempt, last time, organizational meeting hadn't been set, so it kept getting pushed out. And other meetings, because we had 3, so 3 would just not show up if we didn't want to do things that the other 3 did and vice versa. So we ran into a situation where we never really had a quorum, so we couldn't have meetings, and then it became, why are we not swearing in the new people who've been here for like 40 days, and why are we taking all these lame duck actions beforehand? Let's just swear these people in. How do we do it without having a quorum? Because it was 3, so
So-
3 people could come and call a special meeting, but it wasn't clear if we could swear people in, and then the other 3 wanted to pass stuff, but they couldn't pass it because the other 3 wouldn't show up.
Okay. I understand what you're saying, but my gut is saying, what I'm thinking is, you've got 4 elected, okay? You've got 4 elected folks that are waiting in the wings, and you've got a group that is playing games in order to move the organizational thing. And then with your language, though, if that organizational meeting happens, then you have now set the schedule, right? And you all are looking, when the board makes a schedule for the next year in which an election occurs, you know when that organizational meeting is going to be. And per the terms that you've put in 2210, you know that it's going to be no later than the
Yeah,
40 days,
yeah.
right? And then if there are shenanigans, the 4 elected show up, they read the oath. I mean, that's how I see that happening. Like, if you've got people that are not showing up in order to not have that happen, they are elected, they are certified, they are official, they read the oath, and then we're done. Now, I know that there are a whole bunch of different scenarios that you're throwing out right now where people are refusing to come, and maybe I'm not addressing all of those, but I think the language that you've proposed largely addresses the issue that came up, I think. I mean, I could probably come up with more.
So what do we think? Do we need to, I'm sorry, no, interrupt.
So if you put it to where, if they are, when they're supposed to be sworn in at the next board meeting, if that meeting,
Microphone.
if that meeting is not scheduled or postponed or whatever, could you give the superintendent in policy the authority to swear in those people temporarily? I mean, some people do that in districts.
Well, the superintendent works for the board. so
Right, but-
That'd be,
So,
You just have to get a local official.
yeah, or like in Decatur, they temporarily give the superintendent, the authority to do the swearing in, and then once they take seat, it goes right back.
yeah,
to the board.
my gut on that one is that you're bringing an employee into what could be a mess that there should be an air gap there between the employee and the politics of the board, especially if it's really contested and stuff. That'd be a horrible position to be in as an employee if you have these new people are swear
I
me
think-
in,
yeah.
you know, and if you don't, there's going to be a consequence. It's just,
And you could do the regional super, I'm just thinking.
you could be the mayor or a judge or
Just
whatever.
as, can we take the language out of, that says the board president, or just make it, just take that and just put a regional?
I think that's in the code, though.
Is that?
Yeah, I think it comes from the code, the president. Anyway, sorry, guys, this took way longer than I had hoped. Everybody had ideas.
Well, my wonder would be like, should we review it a little more
Right.
before making a decision tonight? Right, because it seems like there's some questions for Fraser and things like that. We got time before another election.
For sure.
I did not
And-
think of all those hypotheticals,
Yeah, right.
and that's kind of my job. But there were a lot there. There were a lot of hypotheticals. Yeah. Okay.
All right, we hit on 280, we hit on 210, 2160 is the last one. We have some minor
The
changes
last one of the
there.
night?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a pretty simple one. Right now, the policy 2160 says that the superintendent, the board president, and the superintendent's designees can all talk to the lawyers, the board attorneys. Dan and me and whoever Dan designates can talk to the lawyers. But I'm going to use you as an example, Betsy. Betsy has some specific questions she wants to ask the lawyers. And right now, it requires Betsy to go through me. If we're trying to be true to the policy and we're trying to really follow the policy, I asked Betsy, would you put that in writing, and I will send it to the lawyers. The lawyers will send me an answer, and I'll send it to Betsy. I think there's some value in having a little bit of gatekeeping there so that the lawyers aren't getting emails from 7 board members all the time. But it would be nice, especially if there's a particular project that's being worked on, or if, you know, Betsy has some specific questions for the lawyers, or that I could give Betsy, you know, permission to hash this out with Fraser, what I'm really trying to do is honor the policy and really operate within the policy and not try to work around it. Dan can designate staff members like Ken Kleber to talk to the lawyers or whatever, or Linda. But it'd be nice if I could say, yeah, Christy, you have some particular questions about inter-school transfers, and Fraser can answer those. Just go ask her. I would like the opportunity to do that.
Bargaining.
Which we're already doing with CFT, kind of in violation of this. The people who were part of the bargaining team are having regular contact with the lawyers. So, this lends itself to just breaking the rule, and I'm trying to change it so that we're not breaking the rule.
So just a quick tweak of the word that says the board president and the superintendent, or their designate, something like that.
Yeah,
brings
I
them
just
up.
changed it to the superintendent, board president, and their designees.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. That was our last board.
So I do think the follow-up to that, though, and I'm just gonna, because this is where things got a little exceptional too last time. There needs to be a process for review of board bills or legal bills. Because what you're gonna wanna know is if all, over the course of a month, you could have designated 5 or 6 people to talk to the attorneys and not realize it, and then all of a sudden get a bill and be like, ruh-roh, restro, what are we
Yeah,
doing?
I think that I think we should publicly make it the expectation that whatever your firm is billing the district, all 7 board members are having full access to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
I'm reviewing the first batch. if you
The
let us know.
the other thing we had talked about, kind of tracking, and I know Linda's been in a meeting about that, is if you can designate in your billing where, like, who initiated the request. So if it's something, especially like a board member, or if somebody's needing legal advice, not the stuff necessarily on the retainer, but if you're asked to do a project or do some research and come up with a memo or something like that, because in theory, what one gets, everybody gets. So if you're doing that, can you designate in your billing, like, requested, whatever your line item, requested by Betsy or requested by Tony, or?
Yeah, I think we can have that conversation offline. And yes, the answer is yes. Yes.
All right. Item I, any other general questions? No. All right, we're, number 5, public comment. We have no one left in the public to make comments, so we'll move on to number 6, which is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Henry, we got Walker, Holder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
I'm not even allowed to.
Thank you, everyone.
But aye. Yeah. I'd like to join in that motion.
Told you policy was going to be fun.